and its regulations of January 2000, the Wellfleet Conservation Commission will hold public hearings on Wednesday, April 7th, 2021 at 5 p.m. via remote meeting pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's orders imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted at this meeting. Town Hall is closed to the public and the board members will participate in this meeting remotely. And in attendance, the commissioners are John Portnoy, Mike Fisher, Barbara Brennesel, and Leon Shreves. Do I hear a motion to start the business meeting?
So moved, Michael.
Okay, second.
Second, John.
Okay, so we'll have a vote. Vote. I don't know why I have a hard time saying that. Barbara,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and me, Leon Shreves, yes. Okay, I guess we go straight to mail and discussions of therein. Does anybody know if we've had any mail?
I don't know.
There isn't anything new in the bin.
Okay, so mail is a non-function. I understand.
I'm sorry, Leon, could we talk about the brochure under mail since it wasn't listed otherwise on the agenda?
Sure. You're talking about which are you talking about, Mike? About
The small vessels brochure that Barbara's been working so hard at?
Right. Okay, where are we with that, Barbara?
Well, is Jordan Halloran on? Because she's the AmeriCorps person who's been working on this.
No.
Okay. I mean, I could share my screen and show it, but she said she was going to join the meeting. I see Hillary here, so maybe we could ask questions about the stairs at 1400 to Kesset Neck Road until
That's a good idea.
Jordan contacts us.
Okay, that sounds like a great idea.
Yes. So we reached out to Sims Weller, who is the owner of the property next to 1440, where we thought that the stairs were, and they actually are not on his property, they're on the neighboring property. So after much back and forth with the property owner, because he's not at that house full time, so he wasn't sure if Cape Associates went out and put the stairs in or not, but they're not his stairs, they belong to the neighbor. So now we're working on communicating with the neighbor, the next house down. So so it's still in queue, but we're getting closer. And Mr. Weller will be coming back before us to reinstall his stairs with a removable stair. So we're making slow progress, but we're making some progress.
Yeah, it's good. I didn't think that Dr. Weller would have done something like that, as sensitive as he seems to be.
Yeah, and he was unsure if Cape Associates went out and just did it. So like it's been a lot of back and forth, and we're moving along to the next guy in line. So stay tuned.
All righty. So we're still waiting for Jordan. I understand we have a jurisdictional opinion.
Yes, we do. Just gonna pull it up here and see if I can share my screen, and I can. Okay, so it's a jurisdictional opinion for 31 Forest Road in Wellfleet. We don't have the map and parcel, but it is the removal of a mostly dead oak tree to the right of the house. It's in danger of dropping a giant limb. And here's a picture of it. And it is mostly dead, and it's in a pretty unvegetated area here.
Mm-hmm. I take it this left-hand limb is the one she's talking about?
Yeah, I think she wants to take the whole tree, though.
Yeah.
It's a dead tree?
It's dead.
Well, we do know that dead trees provide habitat, but at the same time, you wouldn't want it to crash through her house. or her lamp out there.
Yeah, it does seem to be leaning on the house, toward the house.
Yeah. Depending on where the wind's coming from, it could even be worse.
Is it very woodsy or vegetated there? Is there potential for mitigation?
I mean,
or-
we could have her plant a new tree in its spot, or maybe somewhere further out. I wasn't out there. Doug was out there, so.
Yeah, I would like to replace the carbon with a tree. And
Sure.
it could be any, an oak tree, a cedar tree. If she wants to put it, not so close to the house, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay, I can make that recommendation.
Do we need to vote on that or?
Yes, please.
Okay, do I hear a motion on replacing that tree with a new tree, perhaps in a slightly different location?
I would move that we approve the removal of the tree provided as a condition that another native tree be planted there.
Second, Michael?
Great. Okay, voice vote. Barbara Brennesel,
Yes,
John Portnoy,
Yes.
Mike Fisher,
Yes.
and Leon Shreves, yes. So that's, and what, do we have to sign a form for that?
no,
Oh, good. Okay, so Hillary, why don't you go get comfortable?
Yeah, I'm gonna just move myself around. I will be back at 5 o'clock unless.
So
any-
did you have your knee operated on?
Yes, I had my ACL replaced at the end of March, that Thursday. And so I just started PT this week and we're getting it moving, but it's all in all rather discouraging.
Yeah.
It,
It sounds like it's worse than having a artificial knee put in.
I don't know. I mean,
To
it's
get those
just-
people up and moving.
Yeah, no. So I can't fully weight bear because the way they replace it is they take it from your patella tendon, and so it's like 2 injuries in the same knee instead of just one. So I don't know. It's frustrating. It's frustrating, but I'll get there. I'm only
Well, no flag football for you for a while.
right, exactly. So I'm just gonna move to another room and
Hello?
get back into the living room, and I'll be
Okay.
back with you.
All right. Nice
See you
seeing you.
shortly.
Do we have any meeting minutes to approve? Christine? Chris, there we go.
I am here. I keep muting myself and then I come back. Let's see, March, was it 17? 3,
yes, Michael edited those.
And then
yes.
Barbara went over with another level.
So did those get into the final record?
I sent them to everybody, including Chris,
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I looked at them, they look fine. I guess I should have said so. Hi, Ben.
So I move approval of the minutes of March 3rd, was that?
no, 17.
17, March 17.
Have a second?
Barbara, second.
Okay. All right, so I'll have a voice vote. Barbara,
Yes,
John?
I wasn't there. I abstained.
Oh, that's right. Mike,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
and Leon, yes. So those are approved. Does anybody have anything else that we need to talk about at the business meeting?
I can try to share my screen to get to that
Yeah, why don't you-
brochure.
can you do that?
Let's see if I can.
Looks like it.
All right.
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh.
So this is the one side of the brochure.
Mhm.
We changed the title. Jordan had kayaking Wellfleet waters or something, or kayaking Wellfleet. And we thought we should make that more inclusive because some people are using SUPs or canoes or whatever. So this is the front, back, and then the meat of it is here
Okay.
inside. So
Mm.
I don't know if we should I should just email this to everyone for your thoughts. I like the way she divided it up into using your vessel, storing your vessel, and permitting your vessel. And she
Mhm.
basically distilled all the regulations here. I
Hmm.
made a few suggestions about text and then she also had two versions. One is this one, which is left justified. She had a center justified version where all the words were sort of centered justified on each page. But I think
Mhm.
there's another option, and I forget what you call it, where you can make all the text go from side to side and completely justify it. Does anybody remember what that's called?
Oh, I know what
I used-
you're saying.
I
It's-
used to have to do that for my manuscripts, and now I
Right,
can't remember what
right.
it is.
They insert spaces and things in it to.
So that everything's aligned on both
Yeah, it's
sides.
called right justified, I think.
No, this is left justified.
Yeah, you're right, right. What is it?
I don't know if it's right justified.
I haven't made a document in so long that I.
I completely forgot, but I thought that might look the best.
Yeah, one thing I thought in looking at it is that either by using color or maybe font size, it's hard to pick out that the first two are separate titles a little bit because they're so close that maybe we can uh, change the level of it, or maybe change the font, or not the font size of the middle one a little bit, or something to.
I think when it's folded, it's going to be a three-fold.
Oh, okay.
That each of those will be on one
Oh,
page of the
good point. Good point.
trifold.
But
Yeah.
actually, I would add to his point that when you fold it, there's not really going to be margins because it's such a
Right.
tight space. So
Yeah,
maybe
it's
there is a
pretty
way to
tight.
format it so that there's more space.
I think she could do that. And she could probably print one out. I used to print them out in black and white just to see if I could fold them and they'd all.
Mhm.
So I would suggest that other kind of justification where it's side to side and then
Mhm.
make sure it folds. And you can see all the,
Well, if you send us, if you sent me a copy of this as a PDF and I printed it out on a two-sided
right,
printer, would that be the same as what we'd get from the?
yes.
It
I
would
think
be?
basically, although she used a different program, she saved it as a PDF, but she used some other Canvas or some other kind of program to do this. But anyway, your thoughts, and you really need to read the text, I think, before this is actually printed in quantity.
Well, if you could mail that to us, we could read it. and-
She just wanted to get some final edits before I did that. So
Oh, okay, well, that's fine too.
I'll ask her to do that. And then I should mention that I've already sent a letter to the Field Point Homeowners Association about vessel storage, and one to the Gull Pond group. And the Gull Pond group is very happy about this because they said that there've been a lot of people just leaving kayaks in inappropriate places on properties that they're not supposed to have access to. So they were kind of happy that we came up with this as well.
I think it's a great idea.
And
Well, at least
then,
now we have something to leverage on if.
well,
if-
I'm hoping that, what I'm hoping is that this could be sent out if you got a mail-in beach sticker, that this could, when it's mailed to you, that this could go with it. Or if you
Right.
got a beach sticker at the sticker office, that this
Mhm.
could be handed out
Right.
as well. So I was hoping that these could be printed up before the beach stickers were distributed.
So
Is
Barbara,
there a rental place in Wellfleet where people rent boats?
Yes, I would bring a bunch to Jack's Boat Rental.
Right, right.
Barbara, there's two questions. She has sort of a watermark of a kayak behind, and I'm not sure that adds much. You have that gray line across the middle, and then it's sort of the two paddles. I wonder if that's a little bit too cute.
Yeah. It looks like somebody spilled coffee on
Well, you wouldn't really, if you were reading just one part of the trifold, you wouldn't really get what that was, right?
Right, right.
So
It's
should
a
I,
good thought.
should I just have her leave the paddles out maybe, or leave that kayak out?
Well, maybe you could have her just leave it out on one version, and then we can look and see if it loses anything or gains anything.
Okay,
Yeah,
And the other question is, we've got the phone numbers in the bottom of the right-hand column. It's not on your screen, but it's there. And that's good. I just wonder whether the beach department wants everybody to call in, or the harbor master, everybody to call in, or whether it would just be directed at their websites.
right.
yeah, we might want to verify that.
Yeah, I don't think Hillary wants people calling her up what happened all day about this too. Uh-oh, I just did something to enlarge it by mistake. There we go. So she should replace the information with a website, but I don't know if the beach department has it on a website.
Well, I know when you apply for the slots on the racks, you do it through the internet. There's a
Okay.
form that you fill out online.
So I'll tell her maybe websites rather than phone numbers.
Right. Maybe she can look into what and make sure that the right URL gets put in there.
Yes, Ms. Thomas wrote to you a nice note. Maybe we could write back and say, do you want us to have people call or use a particular website?
Okay. I think she'll say the website if they want to register.
Yeah. And if she could, if people aren't satisfied with the information they get from the website and call her anyway, or call
Well,
somebody.
her number is probably on the website, I would imagine, but I could look at that website and see what's there.
And then if people have reoccurring questions about the same thing, we can augment the little flyer here or the website, one or the other.
Okay. And then there was a question, she has various places to launch your small craft. She had Chekesset Neck Road Dike. And there were questions from somebody, I forget who.
Hillary, I think.
Oh, about whether that was a good place to launch. And there is a parking lot there where people launch all the time. And people
would be
actually
good.
launch on the other side of the dike as well. So I would leave that. It's a very popular spot to launch.
Yeah, I think a lot of the guided tours launch from there. Or
That's
used to.
right. That's right. They still do.
But it's a great put-in right there. You could drive a trailer down there with a boat if you needed to.
Okay,
Anything
so
else?
other thoughts before I give her these suggestions and then send you all another version of this?
I have one aesthetic, just opinion, and that is I kind of want the font to be the same size for the 3 columns. Just, I don't know, aesthetically, I think that kind of, I guess it doesn't matter that much, but that's just what I would say.
But either she's trying to fill space, or maybe this is considered to be one of the most important parts of it. I don't know what her.
That's the thing. It doesn't seem to be, like, content-wise, it doesn't seem to be necessarily more important than the other 2 columns.
Right.
Well, I could suggest to her that she do that, and then in this middle section, all the information would just be in that middle panel, like she has consulting
Yeah.
the Wellfleet environmental protection regulations, and then she says, for more information, contact the beach department. We could have all the contact information in that middle panel,
Right.
and then make that all the same font.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
It's the same font, it's just font size.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ben,
Well,
what
that's-
are your thoughts about the actual font itself? It's a sort of a sans serif.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think it works for, I guess that's kind of a flyer font. I don't know. I guess that works.
Yeah, it's,
It just needs more space around the word,
yeah.
the text, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Well, it's possible that if she does get the justification, she can get the same amount of words into, well, probably not, unless they start hyphenating, like pre-existing would be pre-existing. There's a lot of stuff in the first one, not much in the second column, and a reasonable amount in the third.
Well, that's because I'll go back to the headings if I can move this back
That's
down.
because that
It's
makes
the
sense.
content, storing, permitting, and using.
Yeah. Well, the storing is the part that we're really
Right,
interested in, right?
right. Yeah, that's right. And we have a select person, Ryan Curley, who doesn't think we should be dealing at all with the permitting issue. But I think this could come from not just us, from the beach department too, because Suzanne's looked at this as well. So this isn't just from conservation, this is from the town, basically.
Well,
And
this isn't,
she changed it, because if you look at the first column, it says the 100-foot buffer, but a lot of people don't know what a buffer is. So
Right.
that's been changed to 100 feet from the water or something like that. And then she
Okay.
changed a few other things too.
Yeah,
So I will send the revised document.
okay. Well, there's some input, and we can look at the next rep.
Right. She must have gotten delayed, or, I don't think they have good internet where they're staying, the AmeriCorps people back there in that house. And I think they have to sometimes go someplace else to connect. So I'm guessing that's why she's not at the meeting.
Is that
Barbara,
the-
thank you for keeping this moving along.
Yes, this is
Oh,
great.
you're welcome.
Let's just hope that it can be somewhat effective.
We'll see. We're still having some issues about Field Point, because the state hasn't come to resurvey the area, and it's not really clear what's town, what's part of the Field Point development, what belongs to the state. But I just told the homeowners there that it's not an approved town storage area, and any, if they want to store, they may have to talk to the state about it, because I wasn't sure. And Hillary wasn't sure last time I saw her. And the shell fishermen and other folks on the public rights to public access committee actually are exploring that area as a place to drive to the beach. So there are a lot of issues going on at Field Point.
Well,
I
it
just-
sounds like there's a lot of,
It wasn't an approved town storage
Yeah.
area, basically. I don't know what it is, but it's not that.
sounds like there's a lot of jurisdictional issues there.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we'll be looking forward to seeing a second version of this.
Okay,
Or-
so I can
This version.
unshare my screen. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that.
We
Okay,
did it. Perfect.
getting better at this.
The modern miracles.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to discuss during this part of the meeting? All right, can I hear a motion to adjourn until 5?
So moved, Michael.
Second?
Barbara?
Okay. Ben? How do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, Barbara,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and Mike,
Yes.
and Leon, yes. So I guess we can do whatever we can mute and stop video for now, and just make sure that we're all disconnected from the. pursuant to-
Can I just make one quick comment before we start the hearings, Leon?
Yes, please.
Jordan Halloran thought that the business meeting was at 5 o'clock because that's how our meeting is posted on the website. So that's why she didn't join us. So I think I would like to make a suggestion that in the future, when our meetings are posted, it lists the business meeting 4 to 5 with an agenda for the business meeting and then the hearings as well, because it was very confusing for her. It was confusing for me too, as I said, because it was posted at 5. So
Right.
Christine, did you hear that? If we can settle that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought
That's
I'd-
okay.
all
Can
right.
I jump in too, Leon? Because I see Mike Shannon on here and he's
Yes.
in the same situation. He was going to present to us at the business meeting, but the business meeting was from 4 to 5. So Mike, we're going to have you come back to another future meeting. Sorry about the inconvenience, and we'll be in touch with you with a date and time. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, I will read the announcement and then we can begin. Pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, paragraphs 18 to 25, as amended by Chapter 28 of the Acts of 2009, the Wetlands Protection Act, and to the Wellfleet Environmental Protection Bylaw of July 1986 and its regulations of January 2000, the Wellfleet Conservation Commission will hold public hearings on Wednesday, April 7th, 2021 at 5 p.m. via remote meeting pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's orders imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted at this meeting. Town meeting is closed. The town hall is closed to the public and the board members will participate in this meeting remotely. And in attendance, the commissioners we have Benjamin Fairbank, John Portnoy, Barbara Brennesel, and Mike Fisher, and myself, Leon Shreves. Do I hear a motion to open the hearings?
So moved, Michael.
Okay, we'll have a voice vote. Barbara,
Yes,
Benjamin,
Yes.
John Portnoy,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and Leon, yes. So we are now engaged. The first hearing that we're going to hear is Simone, map 28, parcels 186 and 185, 5 and 11 Samoset. Is anybody here to represent that? Is that Charlie?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I am here to represent that project. This is Charlie Agro with Coastal Engineering on behalf of the applicants. I'd like to request that this hearing and the following hearing for Mr. Michelson be done at the same time, since this is essentially the same project.
Well, we can go through what we're doing now for this particular one, but knowing that it applies to Mike Mickelson, so that we can just kind of cruise through that one.
So we
Because
can, Leon, we can open them both up at the same time.
we
So
can?
yeah, the wall is continuous onto both properties, and it does make sense to open them both and
Okay,
weigh in on them both at the same time.
Okay.
One additional thing, we do have Adam Finkel and Mitch Buck here from Woods Hole Group to present their peer review as well. So I think we should let Charlie get going, and then we can hear from Adam and Mitch, and then the commissioners can
Okay.
discuss the matter.
All right. So with that in mind, we are discussing the Simone and Mickelson items. Charlie, you want to begin?
Yes, thank you, Leon, and thank you for that, Hillary. I would like to share my screen, if that's okay, to show the plan. Let me see if I can do that. Performance standards allow. Okay, is my screen here that has the plan open right now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, this project was previously presented back in December. It's a proposed rock revetment across two properties adjoining. Oh, you know what? This is the wrong plan. That's the next project. Sorry about that. So yes, this project was originally presented back in December. It's a proposed rock revetment across 2 properties on Samoset Avenue in Wellfleet. The rock revetment does extend onto the next property owner to the south at 5 Samoset Avenue as well, to tie in both rock revetments and connect them together. The proposed project includes reconstructing the existing beach access stairs as granite block steps built into the rock revetment as shown on the plans. Per the comments from the Woods Hole Group report, which I will let them discuss after my presentation here, we did show, or we did clearly show the area of upper bank restoration above the rock revetment as recommended, and we included some notes regarding the plantings to be installed above the rock revetment, and we did also include an area of bank restoration seaward of the proposed rock revetment here. The proposed rock revetment was designed and is recommended at these sites due to the ongoing coastal erosion that has been experienced across both properties. When this project was originally designed last year and presented or submitted last year at the height of the pandemic, there was a couple nor'easter storms that hit the shoreline in a row that caused severe erosion to the point where, as we show in the performance standards for 21 Samoset Ave, the existing beach access stairs became suspended and no longer safe to use. And therefore, an emergency beach nourishment project was permitted and constructed last year as a temporary solution to the erosion problem out there. The rock revetment would be a low-profile rock revetment, and it would span from the south, connecting to the neighboring rock revetment at 5 Samoset Avenue, to the north, where it would taper into the existing grade as shown in the plan. The end of the rock revetment is 35 feet south of the property line to meet the Wellfleet bylaw, which I believe is 15-foot setback from the property line, to limit any types of effects that may be seen on the neighboring property. The rock revetment is designed so that it is parallel to the shoreline and parallel to the contours, so that it doesn't affect the longshore current and literal transport of sand in the area here. Near to this area, there is an existing rock groin, which does provide some protection to the area against nor'easterly driven storms. So when we have a severe northeast driven wind, this rock revetment does provide some wave dissipation, which does help protect the area, but it does still experience erosion as we represented last year. The coastal resource areas that are considered with this project are coastal beach, coastal bank, and we included land containing shellfish as recommended by the Woods Hole Group. This project is not proposed within land containing shellfish. It is above the mean high water line. However, there is an area mapped 100 feet, within 100 feet of land containing shellfish to the proposed site, so we did include it. This particular area, we addressed the coastal beach and the effect of the coastal beach. As I previously mentioned, the rock revetment would be is proposed so that it's parallel to the shoreline, which will not affect the water circulation in and around the rock revetment. The rock revetment is also proposed so that it is significantly above the mean high water line, as shown in the profiles on the plan here. Section BB, as shown in section BB, the existing grade along the toe stones of the rock revetment is about 8 feet NAVD 88, which is about 3.5 feet above the mean high water elevation, which means that only very significant time periods of water level increase actually inundate the area and would be impacting the rock revetment. And during these events, usually there's already increased erosion and increased wave energy. And again, as I previously stated, the presence of the groin will help dissipate some of that wave energy as it impacts the rock revetment. And due to the orientation of the rock revetment and the groin, I believe that the rock revetment will cause minimal wave reflection and increase of wave energy. All hard structures may cause increased wave energy due to wave reflection, but in this case, it is designed so that it is embedded into the grade, existing grade as much as practical, as shown in this cross section here. So at most times, the rock revetment will be covered with existing sand, and while the rock revetment is covered with sand, it will not cause any effect to wave energy increase.
Excuse me,
It should be
but
also-
are we supposed to be seeing a plan? All I see
Yeah.
is text.
Sorry, let me try to reshare my screen here. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, yes, that's much better.
Yeah, section BB here shows a lot of the story that I'm telling here. Another point that I'd like to make too is that there is an existing coastal engineering structure across the entire site. The existing coastal engineering structure is a old timber bulkhead that I did, a good amount of research on and had a hard time finding the date of construction or any license plans or any types of plans related to it. But from some of the history I looked through, it looks like it was maybe constructed in about the 50s or early 60s. And it does appear from Google Earth imagery and other sites to the north that this timber bulkhead spanned all the way across the southern extent of Samoset Avenue and Indian Neck here. And this existing coastal engineer structure is, we're proposing to remove it as part of this project. It's a vertical structure closer to the water line, which would produce more wave energy reflection than the existing rock revetment would. And at this point in looking at the beach and the beach profile itself, and also when looking at Google Earth, the beach actually appears to be in a healthy state here. It's the coastal bank that is currently eroding that is causing a threat to the upland dwellings on 21 and 11 Samoset Avenue. So again, as part of the process, the commission referred this to a third-party consultant's review. We went through their report, which I will let them go over, and we did make several changes to the plans. We made several changes to the performance standards and included a response letter to their report as well. And I think it makes the most sense to address our response letter after they go through their report. So at this point, if there's any questions or concerns before we move over to their report, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, is that Mr. Fink? Okay, Ms. Hull, you're on.
All right. So I will try to keep things as brief as possible. I am getting a little feedback. I don't know if other folks, if you aren't muted, if you could mute, that would be great. Sorry. That's a lot better. So I'll try to keep my presentation as brief as possible. I think that Charlie did a great job of providing an overview of the project site, the existing conditions, and the proposed project. And as Charlie mentioned, the commission had reached out to Woods Hole Group to provide a peer review of the existing application for the Samoset projects. And our scope included a review of all the permitting documents that were provided to the town with the notice of intent application, a site visit with coastal engineering to review the proposed project and evaluate the existing conditions found on site, and then a technical memo that provided written feedback to coastal engineering that, as Charlie mentioned, once addressed, would allow the commission to help make informed determination on the project. And so we met with Charlie at the Samoset Avenue site in late February to evaluate the existing conditions, the adjacent coastal engineering structures, the existing timber drift fence that exists, and timber bulkhead structure that exists seaward of the eroding coastal bank. and evaluated the coastal resource areas found on site. So the wide coastal beach, land containing shellfish, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the eroding coastal bank. Once we conducted the site visit and received additional information back from coastal engineering, we prepared our technical memorandum, which provided a comprehensive review of the proposed project and the permitting documents. And without going through point by point, we provided feedback on the notice of intent application, so the Form 3 application, the project narrative, the performance standards narrative, the alternatives analysis, and the project plans. And just touching on a couple of points that we felt like were something that needed to be addressed that Charlie didn't address directly now, but also required a bit of feedback from the commission. One point that we picked out was the need in this location for some type of monitoring, post-construction monitoring, and the requirement and thresholds that would be established for nourishing the structure. So it was clear from the plans that the site and the structure would be backfilled following construction. The town bylaw does state that nourishment is an annual requirement in town, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Hillary. But there wasn't a stated threshold that would trigger a nourishment event post-construction. And Charlie shared with us that there were some concerns expressed by the commission about the proximity of the project to land containing shellfish and the need to minimize any sediment that would impact shellfishing ventures in close proximity to the site. So that was one point that we felt like was worth mentioning tonight. The other point was trying to determine if there were alternative means of protecting this particular property and these particular resource areas other than the sloping rock revetment. And so we did provide written feedback regarding each of the alternatives and how they could be expanded upon and potentially improved upon to rule out other alternatives. And I know that there's certainly a lot of interest in soft solutions and trying to steer clear of more hardened structures. But in this particular location, with the close proximity to the vertical timber and sheet pile bulkhead that extends to the north along Samoset Avenue, and the adjacent coastal engineering structure at 5 Samoset, and the existing timber bulkhead structure fronting the proposed project location, we felt that it would be particularly challenging to try to sister up even a robust soft solution against those harder engineering structures. And it would be likely that a softer solution would result in high maintenance costs, extensive repair costs, and the need for pretty consistent maintenance following coastal storm events. So in short, just providing a summary, after the site visit, reviewing the plans and reviewing the alternatives that were considered, we did make the determination in this location that in our opinion, the sloping rock revetment did appear to be a suitable alternative to protect the pre-78 dwellings located at 511 and 21 Samoset. But like we mentioned in our tech memo, we felt that it would be important for coastal to address several of the comments outlined in the memo, which would provide the Conservation Commission with additional information that you all needed in order to make your determination. And as Charlie outlined during his presentation, and I'm sure we'll follow up on in a moment with a response to comments, it does seem as though they've done a great job of addressing some of the points that we had outlined. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Charlie. Oh, well, I guess I should ask if anybody has any questions. So just a bit of background. My name's Adam Finkel. I'm a coastal scientist and professional wetland scientist with the Woods Hole Group. But we also have Mitchell Buck, my colleague from Woods Hole Group, who's a PE, who is also on the line, who can answer any additional questions you might have about the engineering design.
Leon, I have two questions, may I?
Certainly, Mike.
All right, the first is, you don't mention the removal of the existing timber bulkhead, and the Charlie Agro wants to take it out. Could you describe the different effects of keeping it and removing it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, that's a good question. I guess I'm curious, without having done a sediment transport model in the near shore here, I may ask if Mitch has an opinion of removing that vertical buffer from the system and how that might affect the near shore sediment transport in this particular location.
Mr. Buck?
Hi. I'm Mitchell Buck, Woods Hole Group, coastal engineer, and I was with Adam on site with coastal engineering to conduct a site visit of these projects, and subsequently conducted a evaluation. So there is the existing timber bulkhead that exists there. However, in my opinion, since the bank has migrated further landward of the timber bulkhead, I think that it's providing only limited impacts or benefits to the beach. So I think by potentially removing it, that it probably won't affect the beach in an overall significant manner.
And Mitch, just following up on that, can you speak to how wave refraction might change with the removal of the vertical timber bulkhead versus how the waves would interact with a sloping rock revetment structure?
Yeah, so you need, with the vertical wooden bulkheads, so you're going to have reflected wave energy that's going to occur during a storm. So waves are going to rush up the beach. They're going to impact that structure, and you're going to get some of that wave reflected back out to the bay. And that reflected wave energy from that vertical structure can potentially cause scour in front of it. Now it's a pretty low headed structure in this location. So, you know, a portion of that energy is going to move landward and impact the bank. But by installing a sloping rock revetment, that's going to have a somewhat a shallower slope than the existing bank, which is scarped and more vertical. That's going to help dissipate the wave energy and cause less reflected wave energy off the revetment that's proposed. So that should also reduce some of the reflected wave energy and any interactions between the revetment and the bulkhead itself.
So your recommendation would be to remove it, right, during the installation of the revetment?
I don't think that its function in one way or the other. It has a significant impact at this point. I don't know why it keeps on. Sorry, I don't know why it keeps on. I keep hitting something. I don't think the structure itself is having that significant impact that, say, removing it or leaving it is going to have an impact one way or the other. So it's I think it's up to the determination of the applicant to determine whether it should be removed or not.
But you said that right now there is wave reflection off of it. and that it sounds like the revetment would provide less reflection. So wouldn't it make sense to put in the revetment and take out the wooden structure?
Yes, that's an option.
Okay.
Could I make a comment?
Mr. Mickelson?
I'm certainly not a coastal engineer, of course, but one advantage of taking it out the old wooden revetment that's really non-functional is that it does allow the public to have more beach in this area. There's a good sort of 10 feet of beach behind it. So particularly at higher tides, there's more room to put up, beach chairs and towels and just have the public use the beach. So it basically creates more beach if you choose to approve taking it out.
And Charlie Agro here, in line with what Mr. Michelson just shared, the existing timber bulkhead is also extending onto the beach and is occupying a footprint of the wetland resource area. So by removing it, we're causing less of a disturbance or less coverage of the coastal beach resource area. So by removing it, in the eyes of the regulation, we're actually removing a structure that it currently exists and that has existed for a long time that is occupying some of that wetland resource area. So that was the intention of removing or proposing to remove it as part of the project. I do agree with what Mitch said. It is somewhat low lying, so that in looking at that profile that's on the plan there, profile BB, it is likely to get inundated, or more likely to get inundated than it does a rock revetment. So it could cause somewhat wave reflection, as he said. However, in the case of a very high tide, it's already overtopped and causing very minimal wave reflection at that point. So in looking at the beach now, the beach does appear to be in good health. It's the coastal bank that's the concern. So I think for that reason, from an engineering perspective, or for the form and the shape of the beach, it doesn't necessarily make much of a difference, but removing it would occupy less of the resource area.
Before we move on to the actual details of the execution of this plan, does anybody on the commission have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, John?
Taking the long view, Woods Hole Group recommends that coastal engineering acknowledge that the project won't interfere with public use of the intertidal beach. And I understand that there's quite a bit of intertidal, super tidal beach there. It's a pretty high beach. But over the long term, it will increasingly interfere with public use of the beach because of sea level rise. And for that reason, I want to ask why alternatives weren't included or seriously considered that include retreat, including using a soft structure that allows some retreat. I think it should be, those retreats should be considered because the project will inevitably infringe on public use of the beach, as all of these projects will.
And to answer that question, we did expand on our alternatives analysis in the response report that we submitted after the Woods Hole Group letter. And to answer the question about retreat, the proposed rock revetment is a long-term solution to protect the upland portions of the property and restabilize the eroding coastal bank. Because as you said, as the sea level rises, which would cause more erosion on the coastal bank, those houses would be in more and more jeopardy. And they are pre-78 structures that are eligible for rock revetments. So that is why the rock revetment is the preferred alternative. As we outlined in our expanded alternatives analysis, as recommended by Woods Hole Group, they had recommended combining two alternatives, such as fiber rolls or geotubes with the drift fence. And as stated in my revised alternatives analysis, this was not the preferred alternative because essentially a timber drift fence would act very similarly to how the timber bulkhead is currently acting. And as shown by the current conditions of the beach and the erosion levels experienced last year, that timber bulkhead is not doing anything to prevent erosion of the coastal bank. As Mitch stated, it's a very low profile structure. It's overtopped by high tides and storms that are coupled with it. And in that case, if a timber drift fence was coupled with a soft solution such as geotubes or coir envelopes, as the timber drift fence isn't stopping the coastal bank from eroding, the geotubes or fiber rolls would become exposed to UV rays, the salt air, or salt water, which causes them to degrade at a faster rate. And as Adam stated, which I completely agreed with, is that it would cause increased levels of maintenance, and it could be a couple trips out there a year where heavy machinery is going out there to maintain these soft structures. And I think that the increased equipment access going in and out of the area is worse for the environment and more of a concern than going in there once, installing a rock revetment, and then doing an annual beach nourishment project with smaller equipment as we used for the Michelson Emergency Beach Nourishment Project last year.
Leon, a quick follow-up.
Sure. Yes, John.
How close, what is the distance currently between the structures on these two properties in the top of the coastal bank?
Yes, that's shown on the plan, which I can bring up. The existing structure at 21 Samoset Avenue it's I believe is 23 feet from the top of the coastal bank, and the existing structure at 11 Samoset Avenue is currently about 30 feet from the top of the coastal bank. And also another thing I would like to point out, there is an existing rock revetment to the property to the south. And as it can be seen in the current conditions of the site, there is significant erosion that's taking place behind that rock revetment and occurring on the property of 11 Samoset Avenue as well. And that rock revetment was built years ago. It's hard to say exactly when, and it's hard to say what the actual impact is, if the shoreline is migrated naturally or if it's migrated in this area due to end erosion. It's you can't conclude one way or the other here, but the existing rock revetment has provided protection for that property as well.
Leon, one small question.
Yes, Mike.
Yes, so it may just be a small error, but in the Woods Hole Group letter, they point out that you have the sediment being transported in the wrong direction. It says in both the Michelson and Simone from north to south, but as they point out, it's actually from south to north. Now, it's maybe a small point, but it's a major issue.
Well, it's for the sake of this project, it's a small. That was a typo. And we did revise that and correct that on our response letter. And
actually,
for this particular,
actually, you didn't in the March 3rd. March 31st letter. It's still there on site description.
well, I intended to correct that, and I believe that on the response letter, I stated that we agreed with the statement. So that again is a typo. But as I previously stated, in this particular case, where the beach is already in good health, if you take a look at Google Earth and you look at the beach profile on either side of the rock groin, you have Saul's Gutter on the other side, which may help bring some sand into the area as well. The coastal beach is in good health already. And that would be the case as part of the proposed project as well.
It's actually
and either way that the sand is coming in or going, the rock revetment wouldn't have effect on the longshore currents because it's designed so that it's parallel to the shoreline. So whichever way the sand was moving, the rock revetment would allow it to move in that direction freely. I do agree that the longshore current is in the direction as stated by Woods Hole Group, but for the purpose of this project, that is a minor point.
Is that satisfactory?
Yes, I understand.
Barbara?
Yes, Leon, I would like to ask Hillary if the four-town project about coastal processes is providing any information about how we should respond to some of these projects in a general way.
So not as of yet. We're engaged in another 2-year study to get an idea of where ideal placement for beach nourishment would be. But at this moment, we don't. We do have a standard condition that we can put on projects that says instead of doing beach nourishment, money can be placed into a fund that can later be drawn upon for beach nourishment at a more targeted location. So we have the option to require beach nourishment at this location and then change to the other if that's more ideal once we come up with where the best placement is in these areas.
Okay. And one other question, Leon, the access for this, it mentions Omaha Road, so there would need to be permission from the Field Point Homeowners Association, or else Nauset Road, which is that the public landing that they're proposing to go through for this project?
Yes, Barbara, both of those points are correct. Down Omaha Road, that is a private road. And last year during the emergency beach nourishment project on the Michelson property, we did receive the authorization from the owners to use that road. And we would reach out to them prior to using the road, the contract, and we invited them to the pre-construction meeting, or at least one of their representatives. And she was able to talk to the contractor to make sure that they were satisfied with the way their road was regraded and repaired after the construction. And we even placed some sand at their access at the expense of our client, just to re-establish some of the grading that was there beforehand. So I believe that we would be able to get that authorization again. If we were not able to receive that authorization, there is an alternative access through the, as you said, the public landing at Nauset Road, where we've used to access beach nourishment at further north up Samoset Avenue, such as 83 Samoset Avenue. And that would be possible. It's not as ideal, but it would be possible to access it from that landing as well.
But wouldn't you need permission from the town to do that?
That's correct. Yes, the
Okay.
contractor would, we would have a pre-construction meeting. The contractor would reach out for a public access landing permit, whatever it's called. And those are usually something that the contractor handles. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
I should point out that maybe since you consulted with them, there's going to be the homeowner at the end of Omaha Road using it to put up a revetment on her property, her family property. And you don't want the trucks from two different revetment projects coming at the same time.
So I guess that's new news to me. I was unaware that she was looking to put a rock revetment in. But I think when it comes time for construction here, and just looking at the timing of things, that's probably not going to happen if the project's approved until next fall. So that's something we can definitely coordinate to make sure that there's not that much truck activity going on at the same time.
Also,
Yes.
you just mentioned fall, and that triggered something about a time of year restriction for this, because terrapins access Sewell's Gutter for nesting, and they're a state threatened species. So does Natural Heritage have to be contacted about any of this?
I believe we sent them a copy of the application.
Okay.
I don't remember seeing a comment letter from them. We did receive a time of year restriction for the beach nourishment last year. I believe that time of year restriction is from June 1st for terrapin turtles to, I'm not sure when in the fall, but we can coordinate with the Natural Heritage to determine when that would be, so that construction would be outside of that time frame. At this point, construction is, we're really looking to get construction ready for next year's winter storms. So if it's November, I don't necessarily see a problem with that either.
No, I don't see a problem with November, no.
I think that the commission actually put the conditions on the property for the terrapins because I believe where that project is situated, the dwelling parcel is not in Natural Heritage jurisdiction. I could be wrong, but I think maybe the access on Omaha and driving to the right there is in jurisdiction. So the property, the parcel is not, but the access may be. So
I think
That's
you're right.
correct.
I think you're right, Hillary, yeah.
Thank you for that, Hillary.
Sure.
Is all the work going to happen from the beach? There's nothing that's going to be done from on top?
That's correct. All the heavy machinery will be from the beach. That's correct. No work coming down from the top. I looked into that, but the septic system on 11 Samoset Avenue and the structures on 21 Samoset Avenue would make that very difficult, and it would cause more disturbance. So it is a good site to work from the beach, and that's the plan.
Have you consulted with the Shellfish Constable, Nancy Chavetta, about this project?
We didn't. The project is considerably above the mean high water line here, as previously stated, and it's not within land containing shellfish. As recommended by Woods Hole Group, we did address some of the impacts. Some of the impacts that would be relative to land containing shellfish in a regulatory perspective would be the grain size distribution, which prior to Nourishment, we would take a sand sample from the beach and a sand sample from the proposed sand pit where the sand would be coming from, and do a grain size distribution analysis of both samples to ensure that any sand being supplied to the coastal bank as mitigation would be grain size compatible with the existing beach sand. And other areas where land containing shellfish would be relative to this project would be beach erosion, which I think we've previously addressed that this project was designed so that it should not cause a significant increase in beach erosion, because there is an existing structure that's there, and the beach does appear to be healthy with that existing structure being there. As Woods Hole Group stated, the sloping rock revetment would cause less wave reflection, therefore wave amplification and increased wave energy. So therefore, the project should reduce any erosion that's attributed to increased wave energy due to coastal structures.
I'd like to ask the Shellfish Constable if she has anything to respond to that. Nancy?
Thank you. I did submit a letter for this to Hillary and the chair of Conservation Commission at the time. And the one thing that we would like to do is to have a meeting, a site visit, just so that we can point out to the people doing the work, the actual construction company doing the work, the access route and staging of materials, so that they don't by accident put them in an area that could be that could contain shellfish, or on that Sewell's gutter area that is has harbor and water entering and exiting. And the other thing that when you do the beach nourishment, I know that this looks like it's basically above the mean high tide, but just not to do beach nourishment when it's astronomically high tides once a month, because then it'll just immediately come out in 1 or 2 tides. It's just better if it can come out a little bit at a time, because there is just 100 yards away heavily fished shellfish resources, and then Grant's not too far either. And let me just see, I'm just looking at my letter again real quick. Yep, I think it's those were my 2 points. Thank you.
And they also don't want to stage anywhere that prevents access for the grant holders by truck.
Yeah, to the south. Oh, I did have a question though. So, I wasn't sure. Is the sand migration here going south to north?
No, north to south.
I
think that's what we just discussed, and it was north to south, right?
I wasn't sure. I got confused over which one was the way that the sand moved.
Charlie, that's what it is, right? North to south?
No, it's from south to north.
South to north.
Okay.
South to north.
South to north, and I apologize for helping stoke the confusion there on that one. I agree. It's south to north at this location. And again, my apologies for the typos there. And just a comment on Nancy's comments. I totally agree with everything she just said. And Nancy, I believe you were involved at the pre-construction meeting for the emergency beach nourishment project last year, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so we would do the same exact thing. And it would be my personal intention, and as well as I'm sure the contractor, not to get in the way of any of the shell fishing and aquaculture guys that use the site every single day to access their grants, And that's the last thing that we would want this project to do, is intrude on what they do every day. So I agree with your comments, and I also agree with the placement of nourishment when it's not an annual high tide, and that's something that we can even address during the pre-construction meetings for any annual nourishment projects.
Great. Thank you so much.
Will there be, Leon?
Yes, Barbara.
Will there also be nourishment after storms? I mean, they said they're going to be monitoring it, but does that mean that after a storm and there's a big loss of sand and some scouring, that renourishment will also occur at those times as well?
I think that could be determined on a daily, or not a daily, but on a basis of the storm. If a really severe storm takes place that erodes the beach in front of the tow stones, I guess beach nourishment could be a short-term solution to try to restabilize, or not restabilize, but provide some additional support and provide a buffer for the rock revetment. But that's not currently what's proposed here. What's proposed is a monitoring plan that establishes a beach profile, and when the beach drops below that profile, it would trigger beach nourishment, which, as stated in the performance standards and the response letter, we are also open to an annual nourishment requirement if that's how the commission would rather go about that. So if the commission would rather see an annual requirement for beach nourishment of 25 cubic yards on the Michelson property and 20 cubic yards on the Simone property, which were calculated based on the Massachusetts Coastal Zone Management transects, that is fine as well. I would like to leave that up to the commission. And I introduced the other option just because from personal experience in last year's emergency nourishment hearings, one of the biggest concern was the nourishment eroding and then covering up shellfishing aquaculture sites. So that's why I wanted to leave it as a option, because if you go through a year and minimal beach erosion is experienced, maybe it doesn't make sense to nourish it that year. But again, I leave that one up to the commission.
So can I
Sounds-
suggest, Leon, that we get a sort of 3-tiered beach nourishment plan from Coastal that we can include in the conditions, that we're either gonna nourish it annually, conduct the monitoring to see if it's required, or the condition we would put in would be to put the money into the fund and renourish in a more poignant area when it's required, just so we have all three. And some year they may say, let's just do the nourishment, I don't want to do the survey, or I think we can leave it kind of loose depending on what's going on with the shellfish in the area as well. So we have 3 options that ride with the property, and we can evaluate it as need be each year.
Right, and especially if there's going to be a title or change in the way that we manage that. So is that okay with you, Charlie?
I agree. That sounds good to me.
Does anyone else have anything to say on the subject or questions?
Just thanking Hillary for providing that clarification on the different options for nourishment. And I feel like that not only helps provide clarity on this project, but helps provide clarity on other projects, unrelated projects that we're working on in town. Thank you.
Good.
Leon,
Well done,
Leon,
Bill.
Michael?
Michael, go ahead.
Yes, so in the Woods Hole group, it says included planting detail with spacing, species, planting protocol, plant material, and so on. In the plans, it simply says that will be provided. So we would need a detailed planting plan.
Yes, Michael, so on the revised plan submission, on the left-hand side, we included a planting notes where we specified that American beach grass, Amophilia breviculata. I'm
Beach
sure I
grass.
butchered that.
Beach grass.
Yeah, beach grass. There we go. That's a scientific name. Plugs be planted at 12 feet off center into jute matting, and the bare root plug shall be installed dormant and prior to the growing season. And I believe we also elaborate on that in the response letter as well, defining when that growing season is, which would be, I believe, before April 1st.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything to say or questions? Okay, I think we'll need to vote on this as two separate items since they are two separate items. So do I hear a motion on the Simone case?
Okay, I move that we approve Simone map 28 parcels 186 and 185 for an NOI shorefront protection and beach renourishment.
With
Do I
the
hear-
conditions that Hillary elaborated.
Yes, exactly.
Right, I'll second that.
All right, so we'll have a vote. Barbara?
Very hesitantly and sort of not enthusiastically, I will vote for this project.
I'd be interested in hearing what your reservations are. Barbara.
Well, just that they never tried a soft solution other than that bulkhead. That there could be some geotextile sandbags or something else that could be tried and might work on that project for 5-6 years. I mean, it's not my concern that they have added expense and maintenance of a soft solution. That's not our issue. The issue is, could a soft solution work? And I don't think one was tried there. So I would rather vote for this if one was tried and didn't work.
Right. But as it stands now, you vote yes.
I very hesitantly vote yes.
Okay, all right, I hear that. Benjamin? You're muted, Ben.
Yes.
Okay, John Portnoy,
Vote no.
Mike Fisher,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. So that takes care of the Simone. And now for the Mickelson, it's the same issues I expect. So do I hear a motion for that?
Yes, I move that we approve Mickelson map 28 parcel 184 for an NOI shorefront protection with the orders of condition that was specified.
So they'll share the same conditions as the Simone. Correct? Is that what you're saying, Mike?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Ben.
Okay. All right, so we'll vote. Barbara?
Yes, once again, very reluctantly, and just because I don't think, I think they have a right to protection because it's a pre-78 structure. I'm voting yes, although I'm not really happy and pleased with the project, but I think they have a right to have this.
Okay, thank you. Benjamin?
Yes.
John?
No.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. So both of those are good to go.
And you need a supervisor.
We need a supervisor for both. Do I hear any?
That has to be the town because there's so much going on here. There are too many moving parts.
Yeah, and they the concerns span a pretty broad range of people.
We can do it. It can be the agents along with Nancy. We're gonna get Nancy involved if she's still
Right,
on here. Yep.
right.
Okay, so what wasn't stated in the condition is that there's a pre-construction meeting in which Nancy and the supervisor would be there, but
Yep.
you'll coordinate all that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So those are good to go.
Well, thank you all very much.
It was well prepared. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Boehringer, is the Boehringer project represented here?
Yes, Don Monroe from Coastal Engineering is
Okay.
here to represent Mr. Behringer. Also, Mr. Behringer is here to answer any questions, and We did also have a third-party review that was done by Woods Hole Group, and we met them out on the site. I'll see if I can do like Charlie did, share my screen. I'm not as tech savvy, I don't think, as Charlie, but let's see what happens.
While you're working on that, Don, I'm just going to chime in, Leon. So, you know, we do have an abutter, Jeff Vecchio here, and he's represented by Stan Humphreys, and they submitted a letter, which I think I forwarded out to the commissioners. Did you all receive that?
Yes, yes, we did.
Okay, so we're going to want to hear from them as well. I think they will want to speak too.
Okay.
And Leon, may I also say that I have to recuse because this structure is being built on Wellfleet Conservation Trust land.
Okay. Understood.
So I'm not sure, can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great, I did it, awesome. Okay, so you saw this once before, you did review it. I'll zoom up a little bit just so we can see the.
Yeah, why don't you go to
land view.
full screen?
Oh, sorry. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So the proposal stands the same as the original proposal. We did address issues that were raised by the Woods Hole Group review, and we sent a response into those concerns that they had. We do have a fiber roll return just to return up here next to the Vecchio property. We are proposing some sand drift fences in this location because it is the most susceptible, because this is the building and home that's being protected. The coastal bank, as you can see right here, is right under the deck. So we're, you know, essentially on the coastal bank. Also, we want to point out that in this location right here, this is the roadway access to this particular dwelling. The coastal bank is relatively close, top of it, to the sideline of the roadway. So we are proposing to continue the low profile, what we call a lower profile rock revetment, to the Spire property to the south. The Spire property and the Candell property to the south have rock revetments. They've been there since the 90s. They do beach nourishment on a regular basis. The access for this work is proposed around Old Wharf Road, around the Vecchio property. We did get a letter also from Stan Humphreys that's representing Mr. Vecchio, and we tried to address those. We realized that we only submitted those within the last 24 hours, the response. So we do understand that those may have to be dealt with on a discussion basis with the commission and the neighbor, Mr. Vecchio and Stan. We are proposing nourishment along the face of the revetment, but we've made calculations and have experience with the two properties to the south. Since this is a high shellfish growing area, and also a lot of salt marsh out in the existing bay that we need to address and take into mind when we are proposing nourishment in this particular location. That's why we use the formulas that we used, because they're similar to the formulas we used to calculate and have been consistently placing nourishment on the two revetments to the south. So we're trying to match that so that we get a continued beach profile that matches the beach profiles to the south, which have been doing well. We do propose, and it was pointed out in the Woods Hole Group evaluation, that we didn't have a substantial or a written amount of beach grass. So we would certainly do similar to what we did for the Spars and for the Candells, planting 12-inch on center beach grass, as well as Rugosa Rose. If Rugosa Rose is not preferable to the commission, we could use the Virginia Rose that was, I think it's Virginia. There's another similar to Rugosa Rose that was planted over in front of the Candell and Spire property. We will put erosion control blankets on the upper portion after the revetments is constructed, because that's pretty barren. There's not much vegetation in portions of the existing coastal bank. So we would definitely stabilize that after the revetment is constructed. I don't think I would like to see if there's questions, and then also turn it over to the Woods Hole Group folks to see their recommendations.
Are there any questions?
I have a question, Leon.
Okay,
How
Yeah.
close is I missed it. How close is the structure to the top of the coastal bank? The bearing
Okay.
structure.
On the screen right now, the coastal bank is under the existing deck and within 7 feet of the corner of the house right here where my cursor is pointing.
Okay,
So it's right on the bank. I mean, there is a section over here that's not as close to the bank, but I think if we leave it, I mean, this kind of scalloping here will eventually end up over by the house. So that's the reason for our proposal.
Barbara?
That was
Yes?
that was my question.
Okay. Yeah, this house is definitely being endangered, it looks like.
Well, what about the house itself, not the deck? How far is that?
Right here, Barbara, see where my cursor's tracing right there? That corner of the house is about 7 to 8 feet to the top of the coastal bank, maybe even a little less. Right
Okay,
here.
thank you.
Yep.
Are there, Mr. Humphreys, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you. Stan Humphreys with ECR. Our primary concern is the possible extent of erosion from flanking or end erosion at the north end. Not so much the coconut fiber logs, but the solid 3-foot high timber fence. That's unlike a drift fence, it's solid. It may be close to the 15-foot setback. But with that concern in mind and with additional nourishment that I think is being proposed on the order of 20 cubic yards at that north end, there may be impacts to the adjacent property. What I bring attention to is the regulation within the local bylaw that actually requires, to me, in my reading, a separate plan that's been submitted already, and something that would address perhaps that 3-tiered nourishment option that Hillary was mentioning earlier, but also show where the construction vehicles are coming onto the beach. And that's north of the Vecchio house. It's simply referred to on the plan now as an access with an arrow. And there really are 3 parts of that regulation that I've cited in number 4 of the letter. So it isn't, in my mind, a plan that necessarily shows the whole revetment. It maybe shows just that north end, talks about the mitigation and restoration that would not only follow construction, but also follow some sort of a monitoring and maintenance of that area on the Vecchio property. The planting and revegetation that's shown on the existing plan now may be adequate. Obviously, that's an unforeseen erosion of the upper coastal bank, not just nourishment for the beach that might be lost. So that's my reading of the regulation. I don't know how the commission has handled it with similar projects. But that's all that I have to say at this point.
Thank you. I believe that the more flexible evaluation and disbursement of sand that Hillary suggested will be in effect in a couple of years will cover your concerns as far as the effects of replenishment. Does anybody disagree with that? So,
Mr. Chair, can I just interject? It's Don from Coastal Engineering again.
Yes, please do.
We actually performed that three-tiered, well, actually two-tiered, because we didn't realize that the third tier was the offer of money to a fund. But on the other two properties to the south, we actually do monitoring regularly. We have a baseline that we've consistently used to determine the amount of nourishment that makes sense. And then we juxtapose that to the erosion rate that we've experienced in that area based on the two revetments, and come up with a solution that we present to Hillary each year when nourishment's required. And then we make a recommendation based on that survey, as well as keeping in mind the proximity of the shellfish beds, and usually get an agreement from Hillary on those two properties. We would want the same flexibility on this property as well. I think to address Stan and Mr. Vecchio's issue, we are proposing a separate 20 cubic yards just in the northern corner, up where they're concerned about the drift fences and the fiber roll return. So I think that the owner would be certainly willing to consistently place 20 cubic yards. We would still want to be able to monitor that, though, because 20 in some instances may not be enough. And then I think as being neighborly, they would want to make sure that we're, tracking that. But it also is in the interest of the project to place sand in that location because of the fiber rolls. We, basically have to try to keep those covered. So I think it's a win-win for the neighbor as well as the applicant for the separate amount that we've proposed in that direct location to try to address the concerns expressed by Stan for his client. We also, in the original proposal, Stan made a couple of comments about the direction that the sand drift fences were facing, and suggested that we change the angle of them so that they were not facing to the north, but facing south. So we did that as well. And I think we're trying to accommodate the neighbor. I do realize that there's not a explicit plan that shows the access, mainly because traditionally, and I don't mean to use that in a loose way, that Old Wharf Road has been the access for years for the nourishment to the properties to the south. So I'm sorry if we made an assumption. We certainly aren't making an assumption. We want to get permission from Mr. Vecchio to use that access. And we did propose in our response to Stan's letter that at the end of every day, if the project takes a while to construct, that the contractor would be required to backblade out over the beach that's in front of Mr. Vecchio's property to keep ruts from forming. I believe that we also are proposing in the response to Stan's letter that at the end of the project, any damage or any thing that's not copacetic as far as the access, we would be responsible to restore that. And we would make sure that the agent or the project manager from the commission would be made aware and brought to the site to inspect it, to make sure it's up to the standard that would be required.
Barbara?
Yes, a couple of things. Once again, I'll ask about time of year restrictions on this project because terrapins nesting on Old Wharf Road. What is the time frame for this? That's my first question. My second is more a comment, and that is I like the flexible beach renourishment plan because as we're seeing sea level rise and more of these storms, I think it's important to be flexible in this renourishment and not just have a dictated once a year this amount and just be monitoring it all the time. So I think that's good. And thirdly, I'd like to say that I think what you're doing south of this project has been working. I was very reluctant about approving that project, but I think it's looking pretty good right now. So that's my comments and the question about the time of year restrictions.
I'll jump in on the time of year. Hillary can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we can do nourishment up on this particular place up to May 31st, I want to say. I think the Terrapin Turtle cutoff is June 1st, but I
Right.
would want Hillary to chime in on that. So,
I
but
think
we're
you're-
intending, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think you're right.
We're intending to do all of this work probably like the November to February timeframe to do the construction and installation. And then any nourishment certainly would have to be done like we do the neighbors and try to do them all at the same time, where we do them somewhere around the early May.
Stan Humphries again through the chair,
Yes.
or Hillary. Was there a response from Natural Heritage?
I can chime in on that. There was an initial response and they requested additional information. And we sent that back to Natural Heritage and sent a copy to the commission, but we have not received a response back as a result of that, answering their questions and concerns. We can give you a copy of that, Stan. I don't know if it's on, I don't know if my screen is still visible.
Yeah, it is.
So this is the response, Stan, that we'll send you that we gave to Natural Heritage. They asked questions about what other methods have been used in the past. So we itemized those, took photos of those methods that were used. And then they wanted an expanded alternatives analysis, which we provided. And then I think, I'm pretty sure
Yes,
that's it. So,
I believe we have that done.
okay,
Thanks.
okay.
I was just curious because they may have additional time of year restrictions they typically come back with.
Correct. Yep, they might.
Hi, this is Jeff Vecchio, the abutter. You folks hear me?
Mr. Vecchio?
Yes, hi. I was just sort of concerned with, I think what Leon mentioned about, one of the options about just putting money into a fund and, having that potentially be available some years down the line. I'm just concerned how that sort of addresses this project in the near term, and also, the amount of, the amount of oversight that's going to have. I mean, I think placing sort of the onus amongst, the property owner and myself to kind of keep an eye on it, I think it's going to get a better response, and more of an immediate reaction to be able to fix any problems that come up with wave action or scouring or anything like that, than having money just go into a general fund and then hoping like the town rectifies it. That's just concerning to me, that it would kind of go out of our hands to that level. And, who's to say a major storm doesn't come next year? I mean, we don't have time to necessarily wait for all that stuff to get sorted out.
Can I weigh in? Yeah, I'm just going to weigh in. The money wouldn't get put in the, if you're experiencing erosion on the locust property or the abutting property, money wouldn't go into a fund because it would be obvious that you would need it on that site to protect from the end scour. So that fund option, while we do put it on almost all of the properties, it doesn't get really used. It doesn't get used very often at this moment, and it wouldn't get used if erosion is on the site that we're talking about. So some properties where we put in rock revetments, there's a revetment on either side or whatever the situation is, but the beach isn't dropping. And so it would make more sense to put the contribution into the fund for nourishment in another location. But this site is obviously dynamic. We definitely understand your lot as well, and, the regulatory confines placed upon that lot. So this site is different. So it really is site specific.
Right, so that contribution would be, let's say there was an annual nourishment requirement of 20 yards, where we're talking about sort of on the north side of this property. That would only get contributed to if like you didn't use the 20 yards, and then the equivalent amount of money would go into the fund, or just the same.
Yeah, so if the beach elevation isn't dropping and there's no erosion and it doesn't make sense to put the nourishment on the property, then we would look to the fund. But my guess is at this particular property, you're going to need to put it on that property just because of the dynamics of where it sits and
Okay.
what's going on out there. So the fund option remains in place for the future, but it doesn't mean we're going to invoke it today or tomorrow. We have to take a look at the site and see what's going on there.
Right, okay.
Hillary, could I ask a question? It's Bob.
Go ahead, Bob.
I'm just curious. The 3-tier renourishment is new news to me, and it sounds like a nice, compromise. I was just curious whether or not the property to the south, the Spars, did they have a similar type of order of conditions?
Who's the property owner?
Spar.
Annie Spar?
Annie Spar.
Annie and Alon?
Yeah, I believe that one does have the same exact conditions. It's not new. We've been
Okay.
requiring it for quite some time now, so.
Yeah, it is on their order.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've collected, just to put your minds at ease, I don't think we've collected any money into a fund yet. So, I mean, it's just sort of setting it up for the future, so.
Yeah, we pretty much used up any fund money that might be there because they do need nourishment down there, as well as I anticipate it'll be needed here too.
Well, the point being is that things are changing a lot. And
Yes,
just
understood.
looking at the whole coastline on the bay here,
Yeah,
the whole unit. So we have to have the flexibility to put the sand where it does the most good. But that's after individual needs are met. That's my understanding of it anyway. Does anybody else have anything more to say?
I have a question, John.
Yes.
What will the elevation be of the beach where it meets the toe of the rock revetment?
oh, good question. Hang on. Let me get the plan up here. If we look at the section view, the elevation of the beach, which you can transpose over to the graph here, would be roughly around 7.5, a little bit more than 7.5 feet.
Okay, I see that. Thank you.
Yep.
So the fences, they're designed to capture sand behind them and slow down the drifting of the sand. Is that right?
Yes. So the reason for the fences here are mainly because we've proposed, if you look at the section view, a relatively low, wait a minute, let me get to the right view. A relatively low, you see elevation 11 rock revetment all along the whole stretch of the property. And the reason for that is that as you move from south to north, the experience we've had with, like, you take the Candel's property, they have a much higher exposure, and their top of their revetment's about 18. So we're trying, and then you go to the Spire property and the elevation of the top of theirs is about 15. So we feel that there's this gradual lessening of wave energy as you move towards the north. And that's why we've reduced the height of the revetment, but we want to try to add some ability to save sand and capture sand in the location to the north, which is the most vulnerable for the house. So that's the reasoning, is to try to beef up a little bit for the house that is more exposed, and then lessen that as you move down towards the Spire property, but just try to protect this bank from eroding so that the access doesn't get lost, and then trying to soften the end and put some nourishment at the end so that we're trying to address any adverse effect to the Vecchio property.
Nancy, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't write a letter for this, so I just wanted to submit some comments. They're going to be similar to previous comments. But first, I'd like to start with a question. Don, in the document, it said 46 cubic yards of beach nourishment each year. And then is there an additional 20 in the north part of it, or did I misunderstand that?
No, you didn't misunderstand. So on the screen, right up in this location, we're going to we're proposing to place 20 cubic yards in this location, mainly to address end scour and concerns expressed by the neighbor on adverse effect and scalloping at the end. So yes, there's an additional 20 yards set aside over and above the 46 that was calculated that goes along the face of the revetment down and, over the rest of the revetment. So the total is 66. But we also, when we submitted our responses to, I think it was Stan's letter, that we would like the option to monitor this area as well as, a couple of transects down along this area, just like we do to the spars on the south. We do a couple of transects and some beach topography to try to make sure that we're not overburdening the sand and sediment source so that you don't lose so much material out into the bay that it's adversely affecting the salt marsh and the shellfish beds.
Okay, and so my next question is how much, this monitoring that you do at Spar and Candell, how much beach nourishment do they get each year?
Okay, that's a great question because it has varied. So it varies anywhere on the Candell property, anywhere from 50 to 100 cubic yards, depending on the profile. And then all of the material is placed on the face of the revetment as high up as the front end loader can reach, so that it's taken off of the bank, kind of like mimicking erosion. And then the spars is a little less. Theirs is varied between 40 cubic yards and the maximum, I think there was 80 in one season. And that was a number of years ago when we experienced that really bad winter.
So my comment would just be, that it would be important now because it's going to be additional sand to continue your monitoring efforts, so that because of the proximity of beach grass, which contains shellfish, below the beach grass contains shellfish, and then you have all the aquaculture beds right there.
It's a great point. It is, yes.
And then the other thing to that same point is because it's such tight quarters there, and I know that you're going to come from the north as opposed to trying to fit in, between the beach grass and the rock revetment at Candell and Spar. But again, I would like to be present for a pre-construction site visit. So just to orient people to how tight the quarters can be in some of those areas. And so that things aren't getting inadvertently placed on live shellfish.
We would love to have you there.
Okay. And then the last thing you said about construction, November through February, which is great, obviously, but just a heads up, in the months of December and January, depending on the proximity of ice and the coldness of the winter, it's very busy down there with people taking all of their racks off.
Okay.
So they take all of their aquaculture gear off, and it can be pretty congested. So let's just make sure that whoever it is in good communication with my department during that time period, so that we can avoid any conflicts.
Okay.
Because everybody will be working at low tide at the same time.
I get yours. Okay, I get it, definitely. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ned.
This is Jeff Vecchio again. I had a quick question for, I guess, Don. Just on that north end of the property where it abuts my piece of land there. Yeah, thank you for scrolling up. We talked a little bit about, that additional sand nourishment and the soft structure there and angling the fence. But that portion of my property literally has no protection. There's nothing there. There's that timber fence, Sandra fence that I have in front of my property. It doesn't extend that far. So I'm just wondering, is there something more we can do with, and I know you proposed planting somewhere, but that root system is extremely important in that area of my property, because that's literally the only thing that's holding that part of the beach together. There's no there's no soft structure, there's no fence, there's nothing except the beach grass. So my concern is if we start to lose that beach grass, I mean, we can keep on dumping sand there all we want, but once we lose that root system, you know, I just don't want to have to get a drawbridge to get to my property someday. Is there anything we can do to just help with the root system where it meets my property, just to hold this stuff together better?
Yeah, Jeff, I got on the screen. This is the area we're talking about, I'm pretty sure, right in here.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit, yeah, maybe a
More
little
this
bit, yeah, I think a little bit,
Yeah.
pretty much to the edge of your
Right.
screen there.
Yep, so there's a pretty good healthy beach grass growing on the bank here. We will have to install the fiber rolls, but the intent would be to heavily plant that again. And I agree, we may, if wherever the property line is, we can plant in this area as well. So we usually use somebody like, well, Denny might probably do the rock work, but Tim Fraieri does a lot of planting in Wellfleet as well as other towns. And his beach grass is really good stuff because he grows it in Barnstable on his farm. So we would probably have him do the planting, and he would be able to plant it even tighter in this location than the 12 square, every 12 inches in a matrix. We can have him plant it tighter, maybe 6 inches, so that it gets going much faster to address that very thing that you just raised.
What about that area where your cursor is kind of above that little swatch of beach grass where it's kind of like
Right here?
Yeah, it looks like that whole area is kind of scoured a little bit. It doesn't look like anything's growing there for some reason.
Yes. So Jeff, it'll depend on where the property line is for us to plant, but that wouldn't mean that. I mean, I'd have to open it up to the commission. Would the commission have an issue with us spilling over onto this property to plant some beach grass? It's pretty benign to plant grass. I know it wouldn't be under necessarily this particular NOI or OOC, so I'd have to defer to the commission if they would allow us to go over the property line just to plant some beach grass to address Jeff's concern.
Right. I mean, I would certainly allow that and be a proponent of that, working with you guys to spill over the property line, just to give a little bit of a buffer. It's so hard to draw just literally a line in the sand where, you know, your wave action could kind of stop and where your erosion could stop. So, you know, whether that's done separately, you know, through us as the owners or with the oversight of the commission. I mean, A, I think it would be helpful, and B, I would definitely be, you know, willing to work with you guys so we could kind of spill over that property line a little bit.
It's up to the commission members and Hillary.
We don't have the capability to give you permission to do something on somebody else's property.
Yeah, okay.
So that's a starting point. Sounds like you can work something out with the neighbor there, Jeff, just between.
It may be a separate NOI.
Yeah, we can't make a.
I would just say for the planting of beach grass, I think we could do that under jurisdictional opinion. Planting is very low intensity work. So we could just, you know, file a short form for that.
Okay.
How does that sound, Jeff and Bob? Because Bob's still on the meeting, I think. Aren't you here, Bob?
Let's see.
Yeah, I would just I would just want to see, I guess, what that requirement was made up of. You know, if it goes into an NOI, you know, like, does that affect me in any way?
Jeff, I think Hillary just referenced that they have an avenue which is relatively easy.
Yeah.
Where you involve the agent and the agent discusses it with the commission under a jurisdictional,
Jurisdictional opinion.
Yeah, so it sounds like it would be relatively easy, not necessarily an NOI.
Okay.
but there is some process and level of review and level of oversight from the agent and possibly one of the commission members.
I have enough responsibility with my own order of conditions and stuff like that. I don't want to get into anything more that I got to manage myself, because I got my hands full with what I got now. So that would be my only concern. And for any subsequent owner, that they didn't have different thoughts than me. So, I guess we can just explore whatever the best option is. I think, the bottom line is we're just both on board with maybe getting some additional beach grass in there somehow.
Okay, I think we can discuss that for sure, and then work with the commission.
Okay, any other comments?
Leon, can we go over to the Woods Hole group, because we did hire them to do a peer review and we have not heard from them yet. So might make sense to hear from them.
Who is the representative?
We have Adam and we still have Mitch.
Just had to get myself unmuted there. So I kept making notes throughout the conversation because the points that I was planning to address were getting ticked off of my list. So thank you for providing such comprehensive questions, and to Don for such comprehensive answers. So just to provide a quick overview, again, I'm Adam Finkel, coastal scientist with the Woods Hole Group. And again, our charge for the Bayview properties was to review all of the permitting docs, conduct a site visit with coastal engineering, and Mitch and I, again, were on site and met with Don Monroe to review the existing conditions and the proposed project, and have a look at the adjacent properties to the south with existing coastal engineering structures, and then the unarmored parcels to the north. And then to provide written feedback both to coastal and to the commission to help inform the determination. So I think in this particular location, what struck us was, and I know I'm referring to a project that has been closed, but it struck us as a very different location than the Samoset parcels. Immediately we noticed it was a more quiescent embayment right along Blackfish Creek and kind of tucked in behind Lieutenant Island. Less direct exposure to Wellfleet Harbor, and a significantly lower base flood elevation in this location than the parcels along Samoset Avenue. The project, or the proposed project, is in much closer proximity to existing shell fishing ventures, again in Blackfish Creek and nestled behind Lieutenant Island. And thank you to Nancy for providing the feedback regarding your concerns about the proximity to shellfish and your willingness to work with the selected contractors when it comes time to construct the project. That was one of the things that we had noted. In addition to the shell fishing ventures, fringing salt marsh encroached on the property. But in this location, there was a fairly substantial and wide beach that was at a moderate angle, sloping down to the salt marsh. And when you think about impacts of sea level rise and climate change projected out through the 2050, 70, 2100 time horizons, at least at first glance, without running a model in this particular location, it did appear as though there was room for that fringing salt marsh to continue to migrate landward. The drift fencing in this location, coupled with the revetment, was of interest because, again, we did hear from Don some of the concerns that the commission had expressed in the past about the nourishment that's been placed on the beach and the impacts to the adjacent shell fishing flats and aquaculture ventures. And so it was interesting to see the drift fencing proposed in this location to help maintain the nourishment footprint and reduce significant sediment loading to the adjacent flats. So that was something that was of interest to us. And again, thank you to Nancy for commenting on that. From my perspective as a wetland scientist and someone who works on a lot of ecological restoration related projects. I was happy to see the fiber roll return at the north end of the project to mitigate the end effect erosion, and appreciated hearing from Stan and from the adjacent homeowners regarding their concerns and the questions that they posed to coastal engineering regarding how best to mitigate those end effects. And then again, hearing from Don a little bit more about the restoration and revegetation protocol, both above the proposed rock revetment, along the fiber roll array, and on unvegetated portions of the existing coastal bank. And the fact that Tim Friary's grass is specified with the local ecotype coming from Barnstable, that was reassuring to hear as well. So thinking a bit about our comments to coastal engineering, and again, this was something that was addressed, but I am touching on it because it is featured throughout our memo, but just making sure that coastal engineering and the homeowners and the commission are all on the same page about what the thresholds for nourishment are in this location, and subsequently the nourishment requirements moving forward. And it sounds like there's an interest in applying that tiered approach in this location as well. A second point that was raised in our memo was making sure that restoration and revegetation above the proposed rock revetment was robust enough to withstand overtopping. And one of our comments included including erosion control matting that the American beach grass plugs would be planted through to help mitigate any erosion during an overtopping event or during the dry season from dry running sand along the coastal bank in that location. So both of those were positive changes and feedback that we appreciated hearing tonight. And I think that hearing more about the concerns about utilizing Old Wharf Road and coming around the abutting property to the north, one additional comment that kind of came up as I was listening to the construction methods, it may be prudent in this location, if it's not specified, just to utilize construction matting. So just machine mats to be able to round that corner to the north and prevent any additional rutting to the roadway and to the beach in that location. So I think that we've heard from a lot of folks on this. I'll step back and defer back to the commission to see if there were any specific questions about the feedback that we provided, or any specific questions relative to the engineering design that Mitch will be able to address.
Do the members of the commission have any questions?
Did we
Barbara,
resolve the question? Did we resolve the question about using Rosa rugosa?
No, I didn't. I don't think so.
Well, I don't think we should use it.
And that was, thanks, John, for that comment. That was something that we did specify in our feedback, that we, rather than utilizing the Rosa rugosa, which doesn't provide significant erosion control or significant root mass in that location, we did suggest the American beach grass plugs, but then also an assemblage of coastal salt tolerant plantings in that location.
I saw that your comment, but the rugosa was still in the coastal engineering response to your comment.
Understood.
Barbara, would you like to say something? You're muted, Barbara.
Trying to prevent feedback. I would just like to hear more from Don and Adam about the alternatives analysis. And if there could be any kind of softer solution that would work, because this isn't as was mentioned, it's not, that isn't subject to as much wave action as the other properties that we heard about tonight.
And we did provide some specific feedback relative to the 5 alternatives that were presented in the NOI. But I know that Don referred to an expanded NOI that was provided to Natural Heritage. So I'll defer back over to Don to talk about some of those combined alternatives that were presented.
Yeah, okay. I'm trying to get my screen ready again, because we did look into a serious number of alternatives, only because the owner wanted us to do it, and we also knew the commission would want us to do it. So give me just a second to, all right, so under the natural heritage response, we provided additional alternatives analysis information. So one of the key ones that you look at the fiber roll description here, the main reason, well, there's more than one reason for not choosing a soft solution, mainly because, and I think Hillary will recall, that on the Spire property, we actually had fiber rolls in that location that morphed into a low profile rock revetment with fiber rolls above. So the fiber rolls are the first ones that were placed were, I think, for a prior owner than the spars. They failed. Then we placed a rock revetment with fiber rolls above. That was designed by one of my predecessors from Coastal Engineering. The overtopping that took place caused the fiber rolls on the upper side to fail, and then it caused the rock revetment to slump. So now we're in there a third time doing massive construction because we had to remove all the fiber rolls from above. Well, first of all, the first project, we had to remove all the fiber rolls that were installed that were still kind of there, but a lot of them were gone. Then replace that with a low profile rock revetment at elevation about, I want to say 8. And then we put fiber rolls above to try to address the top scour. That caused overtopping and then slumping of the revetment. So Denny had to go back in, take all those fiber rolls out, then rebuild the rock revetment, and then add, I think it was at I want to say 8, yes. And then we added 3 feet of rock to the top of that. And you can actually go there when you visit the site and see the line of change between the original rock revetment at one elevation and then the 3 feet above. So that experience tells us that this is maybe a very subtle area that may look like it would warrant soft solution, but there are storm events, and the velocity zone in this location indicates otherwise. And we kind of try to follow the CZM guidelines as far as where soft solutions should be attempted and where they shouldn't be. And this is a location, because of the BFE, as well as the experience with the Spire property, that a soft solution is not going to work here. I know the owner has already tried sand fencing and planting, which I think is gallant on his part. But if you notice that between the Spire property and his house, the area where he's tried to do the planting and the drip fence, which is short of a fiber roll, he experienced the same kind of issues that the Spires experienced, only the Spires had, and I know, Barbara, it's not about expense, but it is about the expense to the environment, because we went in 3 different times to reconstruct majorly on the Spires. So we want to avoid that at all costs. And the reason we've gone to the lower is that, like I said, when you go from the Candell property, which is a very tall rock revetment, which actually the waves actually get almost to the top of that on some storm events. But then because of I think it's because of the salt marsh, as you go towards the north, it gets wider. So the wave energy is more knocked down by that salt marsh. Another reason why we don't want to put too much sand in, because we want to keep that effect going. And I liked what Andrew analyzed, when sea level rise does occur, that the salt marsh has an opportunity to migrate, which is going to be beneficial to everyone on that shoreline. But I think we don't want to try something where we've already tried it on the neighboring property to no avail. And even Mr. Vecchio would chime in, I think, even on his end, where he's got the sand drift fence that he has to keep covered under the Natural Heritage Management Plan that he has, that if it weren't kept covered would probably fail as well. So we're trying some soft in front of the rock revetment, but it's a different approach. It's an approach to try to trap sand as opposed to knock down energy. I'd love to try it, Barbara, but I'm hoping that you'll see that this has already been tried just to the south, and it was miserable. It was a failure.
Thank you.
You're
Stan
welcome.
Humphreys through the chair. On the options done, why did you propose a solid timber wall instead of a drift fence on that back side there?
Yeah, it's a great question, Stan. We want a little bit more of the wave energy knocked down after it gets knocked down by the salt marsh before it gets to the revetment, because we're keeping the revetment low to try to allow for some waves to overtop so that erosion still takes place, so that the neighbor's property is less adversely affected as compared to if we put a full height rock revetment like even the spars to an elevation 13, 15, which would completely block all sand from getting to the beach. And then that solid fencing would trap the sand behind it so that it doesn't go out into the salt marsh or into the waterway, but adds a buffer to the toe stones so that we don't get any loss of material under the toe stones, and then get that rolling that can happen towards the land if you lose material from below the toe stones. So that's the reasoning behind it. It makes sense empirically. I think it could be monitored over time and evaluated, maybe through the order conditions or something like that.
So on the seaward side, you don't think it would function like a timber bulkhead?
No,
With wave reflection?
It will to a certain extent, but because it's not a straight, it's angled, that we anticipate it's going to act more like the, remember the old style zigzag concrete walls that were installed? They lasted quite a while, and the sand lasted pretty good in front, but eventually over time, they showed the same issues as a straight face. But I think because of the elevation we're setting these at, that it'll be more overtopped than direct reflected, and the angle will also reduce any direct reflection that might cause the scour.
If I can add a little bit to that as well. Most of the efforts that I've put in, which were a combination of solid wall, which was actually in place prior to our purchasing the property in 2013, which has been there, what appears to be, it was oak, and they're just beginning to rot out now, but they've been there, from what I gather, from the prior owner, about 20 some odd years. The part of the advantage of it both acting as a trip, but also a gather for all the sea hay that ends up accumulating, which acts as a remarkably good buffer for wave action when it does come in. So you have a combination of the fact that it trips waves, it does harvest a certain amount of sand, and it does protect the toe, is all part of the function. And where that 4x4 wall is in place currently, other than where it was breached in one place, it has protected the coastal bank exceptionally well for the last 3 years. So I look at it as kind of, it's a sacrificial component, and I'd rather be rebuilding drift fences on an annual or every other year basis than having to try to figure out how to further protect the toe stones. So it's just, that's the logic behind it. And I've got about 5 years of experimenting with it to kind of see what type of function it would provide.
Mr. Humphreys, what is your specific concern?
It's primarily the potential impact on the adjacent property. Any sort of scalloping or end flank erosion.
Okay.
Of a structure.
I see. Thank you. Nancy, would you like to say something?
Yeah, just since this is part of the public comment, I did forget to say for this one what I had said for the others, which is that the beach renourishment, when it's happening between April 1st and May 31st, that you check the tide chart and don't do it when they're the astronomical high tides, which happen about once a month, so that it's has a chance to stay there instead of getting washed out over the beds immediately. Thank you.
So you want to use a neap tide.
Thank you.
Okay, got it.
If I could just make a comment to Nancy, I've currently have a very good working relationship with all the oyster farmers that are just off of my home. And my oldest son is also an oyster farmer in Rhode Island, so I have a higher degree of sensitivity perhaps than some of the homeowners around here. So,
Well, that's great to hear.
so I continue to want to support them for lots of reasons. So.
Thanks. No, we are all one community working together.
Barbara?
In the letter we received today or yesterday, I think Mr. Humphreys asked for a continuance so that they could review the renourishment plan. Are they still going to ask that this be continued?
Well, in part, I think that has to do with what the commission wants to decide on that particular regulation, if another plan is going to be required. There's been a lot of discussion and added information, not yet written down in a documented way. And the continuation is up to the applicant. We understand that.
Can I weigh in too, Leon? I don't think the commission should vote on this project until we hear back from Natural Heritage in case they change anything or want modifications made. So I think we have time to look at and review some beach nourishment conditions while we await word from Natural Heritage. So I would recommend that we continue this also. I don't think we'll need Adam and Mitch to come back to another hearing unless, of course, the commissioners have more questions for them based on the Natural Heritage response.
Doesn't seem to be the case. But that's a good point. I had that down in my notes too, that we couldn't do anything until the heritage people get back to us. So anything else that'd like to be said at this meeting before we take a vote on continuance?
And I have just one other comment. Unfortunately, on the commission, we're faced with this conflict between protecting private rights and protecting public rights to the beach. And over the middle to long term, we're going to lose those public rights to the beach. And I'm concerned about the legacy that we're leaving with all these revetment projects. That's all I wanted to say.
I think we're all concerned about that, John. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I'd like to hear a motion for continuance.
I move that we continue Boringer, map 35, parcel 212 and 33.
Okay. Shall we make that continuance until the heritage response comes, or just put it off for 2 weeks? Okay. You're muted, Hillary.
I think in the interest of time and how long this has been going on, I think we should put it on for our next hearing and ask that Don maybe prod a little bit at Natural Heritage and get a response. So
Yeah, I will be prodding Amy Hennig for sure.
perfect. So let's put it on for 2 weeks.
Okay, that sounds good. Is that all right with you, Barbara, as far as the your motion?
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second, John.
Okay, let's have a vote. Barbara?
Yes.
Benjamin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Mike?
Recuse.
Oh, that's right. And I also vote for the continuance. So we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
All right. Thank you for all your time and all your input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
take a moment, Leon, to thank Woods Hole Group for the work and their quick response and everything they provided us with. Thank you.
Been excellent, very informative.
Excellent, thank you.
Certainly. And as both projects continue, we're certainly available via email if additional questions come up. And thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
So far we have 2 Form 5s to fill out.
Yep.
One for Michelson and one for Simone.
Mhm. That's correct. Thank you. Form manager. Okay, Shadorowski. I see that Mr. Shadorowski's here or somebody's here. Who's representing this?
Hi, Leon. Charlie Agro with Coastal Engineering Company. I will be representing the Shadorowskis on this project.
Okay, great.
And I'm Paul Shadorowski, the younger Dr. Shadorowski. The older one just passed away very recently.
Oh, I'm
And thank you. And my stepsister is Jenny Solomon, and she, if she's still eating dinner, then she'll be here soon. Otherwise, she's on the call.
No, but there's now a dance
Oh, there
around
she
in
is.
the living room, so I keep it on mute so you don't hear like all of Disney's greatest.
She's there.
Yes, she is. Okay, so Charlie, you want to take it away and discuss this?
Sure.
May
Yes.
I just ask a question? Weren't we supposed to have a second opinion on this one also? No?
No,
Yeah.
I'll leave Hillary to answer that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hillary, go ahead.
We had decided against it because there was a structure serving this property already. So it wasn't a brand new proposal to
Okay,
come before us.
okay.
And while we're on that subject, then just to remind the commission, this project, it is in the Wellfleet Harbor ACEC because it's below the mean high water line. So therefore, it will need to go through a MEPA review, which is a Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, which that'll be an environmental notification form. And that form goes out to the Coastal Zone Management, Army Corps of Engineers, the EPA, Division of Marine Fisheries. It goes out to basically everybody that can input on such a project. And so this project will receive scrutiny and review from many other agencies if it moves past this particular hearing here. But onto the project itself, if I can share my screen again. Okay, select window. I'll try to share entire screen. Okay, can everybody see the plans that are opened here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. This project was originally presented before the commission a month or two ago. And at that point, the project was proposed to be a reconstruction or an augmentation of the existing concrete seawall on the property. The proposal was to augment the wall with a new with sheet piles driven immediately seaward along the face of the seawall. And an alternative because trying to remove the concrete wall without doing any disturbance of the existing neighboring wall would be difficult. And it's a typical approach that we've used in these projects because trying to excavate that wall and to drive something behind it would leave all the retained sediment to basically wash out into the water body, which is not ideal. But we did take another look at this as recommended by the commission. And we did, after looking at the site and reevaluating the design, I did see that there is a good breaking point on the wall in this property to use as a cut and partially remove the existing concrete wall and replace it with a rock revetment, a sloping rock revetment, rather than by augmenting it with the sheet piles as shown on the plan here. The point at which the existing concrete wall has a slight return that's perpendicular to the shoreline. You can see it from the walkway and the small timber platform up here. There's a portion of that wall that extends in the landward direction, perpendicular to the beach. And that's the point that we're proposing to saw cut the wall, and the portion to the south of that would remain as is. The portion of the north would be removed, and we're proposing a angled sheet pile return, which is this dark dashed line as shown on the plan. And what that's basically going to do is shore up and hold all of the retained sediment on this side of the wall from washing out, which would potentially cause structural interference and structurally degrade the wall on the neighboring property. So this was designed to not affect the neighboring property, and it will be phased as such so that the bulkhead is installed prior in this area here prior to removing this concrete wall to make sure that all of this earth is retained here. The rock revetment being proposed would be below the mean high water line, so it would require a Chapter 91 license. The existing wall is already below the mean high water line and does not have a Chapter 91 license because it was constructed back in the 60s when the mean high water line actually wasn't touching the wall. And now it is due to erosion and the sea level rise as well. The sloping rock revetment, as previously stated in my last presentation, will reflect wave energy less than a vertical facing wall will. And existing now is a vertical face wall across the entire stretch of the property on the seaward side. So by removing that and replacing it with the sloping rock revetment, we will be occupying less space on the coastal beach. As seen on the plan here, the rock revetment will be installed landward and behind the existing wall. Most of, or not most, but a portion of the stones will also be below the ground, probably about to where my cursor is here and about where it says 15 feet right here. About this line is where the revetment will be underground. So we're significantly reducing our impact area on the wetland, on the coastal beach wetland resource area. And we're also reducing the amount of wave reflection, which can cause amplified wave heights and increased wave energy during storms. As part of this proposal, we're also proposing to remove and relocate the existing beach access stairs as shown on the plans here. The existing stairs are starting to degrade in condition and are a cause for a safety concern. So they should be reconstructed for the safety of people using the stairs. In looking at reconstructing the stairs, we decided that it was a better option to relocate the stairs as shown on the plan to the center of the property. So the stairs would go from the existing deck down to the beach, and the final set of stairs would be aluminum steps. The existing aluminum steps would be reused for this final section of stairs here. The stairs were designed to have a 18-foot minimum clearance between the lowest member of the steps and the top of the coastal bank, as stated in the wetland protection bylaw standards. The foundations for the steps will be diamond piers, which we've used at similar sites that do well. They're not very invasive to install. They're also easy to maintain over time. If the bank does drop in grade, you can remove and reset the diamond pier structure, and then reset the pipes that are driven through the diamond piers that actually make them great for this type of application. In this project, we reviewed the wetland performance standards for coastal beach, coastal banks, for coastal beaches, coastal banks, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. As previously stated, the proposal is an improvement to the effect of the property and its structures on the coastal beach. We received a letter from the Division of Marine Fisheries that I'm sure, I believe I saw Hillary and Doug on the correspondence from Division of Marine Fisheries there, so I'm sure Hillary can read that letter. I don't have it handy. The proposed project will again It's designed so it's parallel to the shoreline, so it shouldn't affect the longshore currents in the area. It's designed so that it absorbs wave energy rather than reflecting it as it currently does now with the existing concrete structure. And it will also improve the coastal bank as a function to protect the upland area from ongoing storm damage, since the existing structure is in degrading condition. Any questions that the commission may have at this time, I'd be happy to answer.
What is the distance from the structure to the top of the coastal bank?
I believe that's in the notice of intent. I can take a look. So here it appears that the existing structure is relatively close to the top of the coastal bank. I would have to scale that to get an exact, so that's 20 feet. It appears that the corner of the building here is about 25 to 30 feet from the coastal bank, and the existing deck is probably within 10 feet or so from the top of the coastal bank in this area here.
Okay, thanks.
So what I'm hearing is that we got some feedback. What I'm hearing is that we're taking out a rather, taking out the vertical walls and replacing it with something that's better for the beach and better for the environment. That's what I thought I heard. Is that right, Charlie?
That's right, and as it states in the wetland regulations and from numerous articles, vertical walls on a coastal beach, as of right now, a vertical wall wouldn't be permitted on a coastal beach, and this may have been constructed at a time where the bank maybe was up against the wall or whenever it was. But a rock revetment, a sloping rock revetment that's porous, that allows water to infiltrate through the rock revetment, which allows dissipation of wave energy, is considered by today's standards as a better solution for shorefront protection for the environment's sake than a vertical wall. So yes.
Barbara?
I have a question about the plan. Are you proposing to start this rock revetment right behind where the concrete bulkhead is now, or further up the bank?
So it is going to go a couple feet behind where the concrete wall is, and what sets that is the slope of the bank behind it. This cross section here shows that picture a little bit better. As shown in this profile view here, there is a flat area that's retained by the existing concrete wall that's about 25 feet wide or so. And after that area, the bank starts to slope up and to the house. And what we're proposing to do is construct the rock revetment onto that sloping at a similar slope to what the upper portion of the coastal bank is, and to cover it and revegetate it as shown on the plan here, and use some of this existing sediment here to fill the rock revetment afterward, fill over the rock revetment after construction.
All right, but why aren't you pulling it back closer to the house, this revetment, rather than using that flat area to do this work?
Well, we are pulling it.
Getting it further from the high tide line.
Well, I think the proposed project is a significant improvement on the intertidal aspect of what's going on out there right now. The existing concrete seawall, it's there, it's existing, it's causing a, well, it's not that it's causing anything, but it's starting to deteriorate and potentially falling apart. The proposed project of removing that is a huge improvement based on in comparison to what's currently there, and reconstructing it as a rock revetment as shown and where it's shown is a huge improvement in that. And if you kind of notice here as well, the amount of excavated material from this side here, this cross-sectional area here, matches the amount of fill that we would be placing over the rock revetment, and the rock revetment would also be constructed in line and with a similar design to what was done in the neighboring property, 83 Samoset Avenue. So the rock revetment is intended to tie into the neighboring property, which, as we discussed in great depth at the last hearing, the current 90-degree angle right here is causes a concern for end scour, and this area has been scoured significantly the last couple of years. Last year especially. This year, last time I saw it, everything looked to be in decent shape, but I haven't seen it in a month or so. But last year, 40 cubic yards of sand was needed to refill this area, and the proposal would be, and this scour also may cause some scour on the neighboring rock revetment here. So by removing that and tying the two rock revetments together so it's one solid rock revetment unit is the preferred alternative here.
Okay, but aren't you going to be using public land for this? If I don't understand where the property ends and the jurisdiction here, because if you need a Chapter 91 license, aren't you in public waters doing this?
Well, any project below the mean high water line needs to go through Chapter 91. So as I stated, this project will require a Chapter 91 license. It has never had a Chapter 91 license. So yes, it will be going through Chapter 91 for permission to construct the rock revetment within the tidelands. And
Right.
since it's within the
So
tideland,
my comment is, why not go further into the proponent's property and not use the public tidelands?
well, because the tide line here is forced. So if that wall wasn't there, so the tide line is forced by the wall. If you see here, the mean high water line bellies out behind the rock groin because this area naturally accumulates sand from the rock groin. As you move southward here, the mean high water line is forced up against the rock revetment. So to be honest with you, by the time the wall is removed and the area behind it is resloped, the rock revetment may not necessarily fall within the mean high water line after the so it's something that there's already a structure there. The structure is dictating where that high water line is. So that's why we will have to go through Chapter 91.
Can I just comment, follow up on that, Leon?
Yes, please.
The mean high water line is determined by the mean high water. It's not determined by the structure.
The mean high water.
I don't think that we're really gaining very much here. I was glad to see that you're removing that vertical concrete structure that was pretty far out on the beach at this point. But you're not building the revetment very far back from it. And the elevation, can you tell me what is the elevation again? You went pretty quickly over those plans. I don't have a copy here. The elevation of the beach, the ultimate elevation of the beach up against the toe of the new revetment.
Sure. The existing elevation up against the existing concrete structure is 3 feet NAVD 88. The mean high water elevation is 4.4 feet NAVD 88. And let me just touch base on the mean high water comment that you had there. Mean high water is a set elevation by NOAA that's determined based on years of studying tidal data. It's published. And the way you delineate mean high water is by doing a topographic survey of an area and and you trace that contour of that elevation. So in this particular location, mean high water is 4.4 feet above the NAVD 88 datum. And that just so happens to intercept the face of the wall here because the wall exists from, as I said, about 3 feet NAVD 88 to about, the top of the wall is approximately 10 feet NAVD 88. So somewhere along that wall is where mean high water hits. So that particular point right there is the mean high water line. Now, if that wall wasn't there, the proposed grade that I show here, that mean high water line would hit the proposed grade at about this point here. But since there is a existing vertical structure within the water line that's forcing the high water mark to this particular location here, there's no way of necessarily denoting where that would fall on the bank until it's constructed.
Well, I'm confused by this because I know for a fact that mean high water in Wellfleet Harbor is generally 5 to 6 feet above NAVD 88. It seems like we're not really gaining much in terms of public access to the beach with the new structure.
Yeah, I'd be happy to forward along a published information from NOAA that we use to determine that mean high water elevation. The mean high water mark is the average of all high tides. The higher high tide line, the spring tide line, is probably significantly higher than that. But by regulation, which is Chapter 91, which dictates their jurisdiction is the mean high water line, that's the elevation that we use. And again, the gain here is the removal of a vertical structure, which is there. They're not obligated to remove that structure. It is in worsening condition, and that worsening condition could cause concern through that wall exists going down further to the south. The beach drop is higher, and it's there right now. By removing it and reconstructing it as a rock revetment with the angle return as shown on the attached plan, I think it's a huge improvement, and especially a huge improvement from how it exists now, and an improvement to how it will interact with the resource areas in comparison to our original proposal.
Can I just add in too, Leon? I think that's why we sent Charlie away the last time, because we did not want the vertical wall, and we didn't want him constructing something further out onto the beach. We wanted him to pull it back into the bank. And so what we don't want is him to pull it back too far into the bank where we're going to cause more adverse impact. So we really wanted it to line up with the neighboring wall.
And that's a great point, Hillary, and I appreciate that. I guess at this point, as we're talking about the improvements, do you have a copy of the Division of Marine Fisheries comment letter, or do you want me to bring that up? I can email it to you.
Let me see if I can maneuver this to find it.
Otherwise, I have it up.
Oh, is that Nancy?
We have dueling
Yes.
shared. Here.
Yep.
If you have it, Nancy, just read it, because by the time I find it, I mean.
Okay. Do you want me to read the whole thing?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Okay. April 6, 2021, dear commissioners, the Division of Marine Fisheries, MADMF, has reviewed the notice of intent and revised plan dated 3/10/21 by Lawrence Shadorowski and Susan Solomon Shadorowski, 77 and 83 Samoset Avenue, to reconstruct timber access steps and to reconstruct the seawall as a hybrid rock revetment and sheet pile bulkhead on Wellfleet Harbor in the town of Wellfleet. Concrete on the seaward face of the existing seawall will be removed and replaced with a vertical vinyl sheet pile bulkhead. Proposed rock scour protection, riprap, will be emplaced on the northern angled return. Existing marine fisheries resources and habitat and potential project impacts to those resources are outlined in the following paragraphs. The project site lies adjacent to mapped shellfish habitat for quahog, Mercenaria, and American oyster, Crassostrea virginica. Subtidal waters within the project site have habitat characteristics suitable for these species. Land containing shellfish is deemed significant to the interest of the Wetlands Protection Act 310 CMR 10.34 and the protection of marine fisheries. MassDMF offers the following comments for your consideration. Appropriate erosion control measures should be employed to minimize runoff from the property into the resource area during construction. MaDMF appreciates the removal of the existing concrete structure from the intertidal area and the inclusion of an angled revetment further landward. MaDMF recommends working during low water conditions and no storage of construction materials within the intertidal area. Questions regarding this review may be directed to eileen.feeney@mass.gov. Sincerely, Eileen Feeney, Fisheries Habitat Specialist.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yep.
But that's not the proposal as it stands today, is it? Are you still doing the vinyl?
That is the proposal as it stands today. The sheet piling is the portion of the return that I discussed at the very beginning. We can't just go ahead and remove this concrete wall without addressing its return somewhere here, unless we remove the entire wall. And that's not the proposal here today. The proposal would be to work as close to the property line as we possibly can, as shown on the plan here, without having an adverse structural impact on the neighbor's wall. Because as of right now, it's in good standing and they are not proposing to make any modifications to it.
Thank you.
Leon, I have a question. It's probably just clarification, but the vinyl seawall that goes into dogleg due south, is that just going to be freestanding? Does that tie into the remnants of the concrete wall? Yes, exactly.
Barbara? Charlie, are you talking to us? Because you're muted.
Sorry about that. The one time I remember to mute myself here. Sorry about that. So this will be, we will construct this using helical anchors as tiebacks to support the lateral loads that'll be pushing against the wall in this direction. The angle return was designed based on the return that was kind of left with this wall. When this wall was deconstructed and reconstructed as a rock revetment, there was a similar situation in this particular location as what we have here. The only difference was the reveal here was significantly less in the reveal, which is the distance between the top of the wall and the beach that we have here. So since this 90-degree return didn't quite go far back enough into the bank to prevent some of that end scour that I had originally spoke about, we are proposing, and which has led to erosion of retained sediment on this side. It led to erosion and destabilization on the bank on this side. So we're obviously removing that, replacing it with the rock revetment, and then we're doing something here that'll have an angle return, which is more suitable and will reduce any end scour effects that usually a 90-degree angle would cause.
So what's behind that vinyl wall to the east?
So to the east, this is going to be, so as of right now, this concrete wall has earth all behind it from the wall to this dark line with the little zigzags in it, that's the toe of the coastal bank. This entire area here is relatively flat all the way working south here. So this is going to have, this will remain as is essentially. And this will be a sandy area with beach grass planted on it. Any disturbed beach grass can be replanted to match what's existing at this site and the neighboring site here.
And the distance from that to the property line is what?
It's about 10 feet.
Barbara, do you have a question?
I have a question about vinyl, because there's such an issue with plastic in the ocean, and there's no data on these vinyl sheet piles and how long they last and the effect of UV light and whether we're going to get more plastic into the ocean as a result of this structure. So it's relatively new, and I just have reservations about using any kind of plastic in this environment.
Well, Barbara, I'm glad that you brought that up, as I do remember that it was either you I believe it was you that brought that up at the last hearing. So I actually called the manufacturer and I looked into it a little bit. There's a document published by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that states that vinyl is the recommended approach for any new seawalls or bulkheads over fiberglass reinforced plastic or steel, because plastic has 100-year plus life. And this is according to the Army Corps report that I can send along for reference. It has, it's resistant to UV rays. It doesn't degrade due to sunlight. It doesn't corrode or rust or rot as these other materials do. So the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers actually recommends that it's the choice for any sheet pile material when used in a coastal environment. The problem with vinyl is the strength of the material. It's actually not the strongest material in comparison to FRP, fiberglass reinforced plastic, or steel. But it is, for those reasons, it doesn't degrade. It's the recommended standard from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And for that reason, it's the most suited actually for the marine environment against rust, rot, corrosion. And as I brought up in the last hearing, the existing seawall is cracking and falling apart, which is potentially allowing concrete type materials to flow into the water body. So again, this would be improving that current situation for the environment.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, because my understanding of this is it might be great structurally and from an engineering standpoint, but not in terms of the biota in the ocean.
I can forward the report along to Hillary so that she has it for future reference. But when it comes down to it, vinyl is actually the least strong of the materials for sheet piles that we use for bulkheads, but it is the best for degradation, leaching of chemicals or any types of materials. And that's like I said, published by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Good point though, Barbara. I don't think anybody really knows what the effect of vinyl in the ocean as far as shedding microplastics. But that's not known.
Well, every other material, such as steel, it's usually coated, and if it's not coated, it'll rot out and rust in 30 plus years. So that's fragments of iron and steel and things going into the water body in 30 to 50 years. If you go up to Provincetown, you can look around at the steel sheet piles. Fiberglass reinforced plastic, there's fiberglass particles and things that do degrade over time. The plastic is like, as I said, I don't need to harp too much more on it, but it's not, I understand the concern, because it is a concern with plastic bottles and things in the water. This will not be one of those particles that they see out in the water as long as any of us are here.
So it sounds like it's the lesser of the evils as far as materials go. It sounds like it has advantages. Any other statements or questions? Nancy?
Yeah, so I didn't see how much beach renourishment was going to be added there.
Where'd Charlie go? We lost him.
Oh, sorry about that. The question was for beach nourishment.
Yeah. I see it says, April 1st to May 31st, but it doesn't, or at least maybe I didn't see it. Maybe it's on the plan, but I didn't see it in the narrative.
Sorry, I just have to give me 1 second here. Well, if you wouldn't mind giving me a few minutes to track that down, and that would be great. In the meantime, I can answer any other questions.
Well, I would just read my comments. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, so it seems to the Shellfish Department that given the wide sand beach there between the proposed revetment area and the shellfish beds, there shouldn't be any major effect on live shellfish. But as you've heard repeatedly in this hearing, we'd like to attend the pre-construction site visit in order to orient the contractors to the access routes, as well as to the location of shellfish resources relative to the work area. And since DMF also commented on these things, then I would want to be responsible for that oversight of their recommendations. And then again, you know, we're always interested in monitoring of beach nourishment so that we understand where it's moving. So, you know, as to minimize the effect on the adjacent shellfish areas. And again, that it would be performed, that the nourishment would be performed during, as Don, I think said, neap tides. So when it's not astronomically high tides. I will just go on the record saying that I too was concerned about the use of vinyl. You know, there's been studies now that are reporting about microplastics in shellfish, and you know, this is the primary economic driver for our town and year-round economic driver. And so, you know, of course, you know, I'll be glad to read that Army Corps study, but it's hard to believe that things don't break out with salt water and UV exposure. So I just want to be on the record as being concerned about that part. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, we've had a lot of discussion on this. Is there anything else that we should consider before we entertain a motion? Barbara, do you have anything else that you'd like to say?
No, I still have my two concerns about where this is with relationship to the high tide and the property, and whether it could be can retreat further this structure. I understand tying into other structures, but those other structures probably shouldn't be there either. And I'm concerned about the use of vinyl in the ocean environment. So I have some reservations about this project. I mean, I think it's, you're right, it's an improvement over what's there. And it's also an improvement on the previous design that we had, which was just for the vinyl sheet piling. But I still have reservations. Those are my comments.
I think Hillary said that it was preferable to have the revetments be a continuance of each other, so that there is no, you know, return or a gap going back there.
If you
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree with that, and I agree with what Hillary had stated previously. That's our intention here, is that the wall be connected to, or the rock revetment be connected and in line with the neighboring rock revetment. I'll let Hillary.
I was just gonna say, if you pull it back further, the high tide is still gonna slosh right up. We're not really gaining anything by pulling it back further. We didn't want it sticking out. We wanted it back against the natural bank. So I think Charlie did do what is customary and what we requested. So we did want it back behind the other wall.
I appreciate that, Hillary. And then just one thing to try to answer some of these concerns about the vinyl. The other materials out there I outlined, one of which is fiberglass reinforced plastic, FRP, which, you know, same material, fiberglass is in surfboards. And surfboards, you get one crack in them, they fill up with water and they degrade to nothing. And not that it's not good material. FRP is great material from an engineering standpoint, but it does have plastics in it. Steel, again, steel rusts and breaks down and would require maintenance or more work probably prior to when the vinyl material would. So those are the three materials that are out there that people use for sheet pilings for bulkheads like marinas and other types of things as well. If you drive around most marinas that have a bulkhead around the area, it's using a vinyl FRP or steel bulkhead. So again, those are the three materials that are out there. The reason why we chose vinyl, I already outlined, because it is the most environmentally friendly material based on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers report It has 100+ year serviceability life as far as it's able to withstand degrading. That doesn't mean that the actual structure itself has a 100-year life, because the beach side could erode by 10 feet theoretically, and that would cause the structure to collapse. Obviously, I don't anticipate that happening, but the material itself does not degrade and is the best suited material for the marine environment for those reasons.
Okay, I will entertain a motion if someone would like to make one. John, do you have something to say?
Oh, I don't.
Oh, I need. Okay. So do I hear a motion?
Okay, this is Michael. I move we approve Shadowski map 28 parcel 114 and 113 NOI construct vinyl seawall.
And what conditions would we have on it?
Well, as Nancy suggested, the time of year. I think that Hillary has probably a list of them.
Yeah, I think we're kind of boilerplate at this point. It's pre-construction meeting, including Nancy and the supervisor from us, and
Beach nourishment, the 3-tiered approach.
right. Did we get a figure for what the proposed replenishment was going to be?
Charlie was working on that. He can get that to us.
Okay.
Yes, it's going to be on the order of about 16 cubic yards, and I will follow up with Hillary and leave it up to the discussion you guys are having about the 3 different options there.
I think I just want to add one too. I know there's some reservation on the commission with this, but this project will go on to be reviewed again by the Army Corps, by CZM, by Mass DEP. So I think there's more eyes that are going to be laid upon this project, and I'm not sure we need to have such intense concern about it, because other agencies will be reviewing it after us as well. So changes can be made if they're warranted.
And it seems pretty clear to me that this is an improvement to the situation.
Yeah, and I think, I feel it's an improvement. I feel Charlie went back and did what we asked him to do, but I'm still sensing some reservation. So that's all.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I'll second it. So we'll have a vote. Barbara?
No.
Ben?
No.
John?
At this point, can I cut in at this point?
I'd like to vote.
I think we're in the middle of a vote right now. No.
I vote no.
Okay. Mike?
Yes.
I'll say yes. I don't see a better option. We have 3 no's and 2 yeses, so that's not accepted, I'm afraid. What can we do to get rid of this vertical wall and make this? What are the things it'll take to heal this? John, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I think the whole new structure should be moved back, and I don't think that there should be any vinyl. As far as the alternative of steel, I have no problem with iron. There's, our soils are rich in iron. It's not a pollutant here. Even concrete is not really a pollutant. It contains calcium, which is good for shellfish. This side of vinyl is as I think you said, Leon, is an unknown, and we don't know what it will shed over time. I'd like to see the Corps of Engineers report, see how they analyzed this question. But those are the problems I have with the project.
So can I just ask those that voted no, you're going to have to be specific and base your vote upon a section of the Wetlands Protection Act or our local bylaw, because this will be appealable. So I just think we need to be very clear on why you're voting no. If that's possible at this moment.
Shall I go ahead?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Voting
just
no
want to
be-
make sure we have it for the record because we do have to spell it out on the denial.
I'm voting no primarily because of our responsibility to protect private rights to the beach. And I think
Is
those
that
are
a wetland?
sacrificed by and I think those are sacrificed by the water level elevation at high tide on this beach after the new structure is put in place.
Is that a wetland protection standard?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's my concern.
And I'll second John's concern, and I'm also concerned about the issue of plastics. I have been reading so much and attending so many workshops on plastic, and it's just it's appalling. And you may say it's not going to break down by UV or anything like that, but it does. It takes a long time, and when it does, it gets into the food chain. And we're eating this stuff, and I'm very concerned about that. I don't think it's an environmentally, it may be approved by the Army Corps of Engineers for structural reasons, but I don't think it's approved for any biologist would approve the use of any kind of plastic in the ocean. That's my concern.
Am I allowed to make a comment anywhere in here?
Yes, but I'd like to hear from Ben first. He was
Sure.
the other.
Yes, my concern was the proximity to mean high water as well. And just my assessment is that I don't see this as being an improvement, really. And so I think that the disturbance from the work would cause a problem we'd like to avoid.
Okay, Mr. Shadorovsky, would you like to, or Doctor, would you like to?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, certainly
Okay.
can.
I wasn't sure whether I was unmuted, and you'll forgive me. This is the first of these meetings, so I hope I'm not going against protocol. But I am a physician, so I think the concerns about plastics that are arising these days, much of it has to do with supermarket garbage bags, which are fragmented into tiny bits and deposited in the ocean in garbage. And that's where the concerns come from. This particular vinyl has had quite a lot of research done on it, and Charlie has that information, but just putting that aside, as I say, with my background as a physician, I'm familiar with some of the differences. The reason we chose that material was based on recommendations that come from your group and comparing it to concrete and steel and the other structures which are known to cause damage. So that wasn't our choice. That was a choice that was recommended to us. And then the other concerns about the mean high tide line and moving the wall back, it seemed to me that there was some confusion there, that the structure that's being built is actually closer significantly to the property line away from the beach, and is, as Charlie was putting forward, an improvement, because if we change the location of the wall without doing this, he was describing the way the water would get in, because the neighbor's wall is right now contiguous with the existing vertical concrete wall. If we were to open up that connection, it would be destructive. So these are based on your recommendations. We're happy to do it any way that you feel is appropriate. So that's why we came back with these revised plans. All we care about is keeping the structural integrity of the beach, the dunes, the health of the area, and keeping the dune from coming down. My father always, and this is the last thing I'll say, throughout since I was a very young child. I'm 53. So since I was a very young child, and he built the wooden replacement steps that are there now by himself. He has always planted beach grass, that American beach grass that's there on the dune when no one else in the area was doing that. It's always been a concern of his to keep everything structurally intact and healthy for the environment. So there is none of this about poisoning the environment. If in fact anybody turns up information to the contrary, we would shift immediately. We have no interest in poisoning the beach.
Thank you, sir. Hillary?
Yeah, and thank you for that, Paul. And I guess I understand the commission's concerned with the material, but this is material that is used across the Cape in these environments. It's recommended by the regulatory body, by the federal government of the United States, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, which I would be happy to provide with that material. And if there is material or any information that does say that the vinyl material does degrade, does cause pollution, as Paul said, we can reevaluate our approach, but it was chosen not because it's the most structurally sound, but because it doesn't degrade. And as stated in the U.S. Army Corps Engineers Report, which I understand you guys have never seen, I'd never read it myself until recently, so I get that. We would be happy to give you guys a copy of that report. And I was wondering if we could take another look at this project and perhaps even have another vote to potentially continue this matter until everybody has had a chance to read that U.S. Army Corps report, because that's where I see the most amount of concern coming. Without that return wall, this project would not be able to take place. This is why we were proposing a new sheet pile wall immediately seaward of the existing concrete structure. That concrete structure cannot be partially removed without damaging the wall on the neighbor's property, which is there currently, and it's their right. It's on their property. It has a license, I believe, and it's there, and they are not proposing to remove it. So the proposed vinyl material is there to retain the earth that's behind it to then re-support that neighboring wall.
Can I make a couple suggestions also, Leon?
Yes, please.
I wonder if the board might reconsider their vote and continue this to another hearing. I think we have two things we can consider here. One is the Army Corps report. Two would be reevaluating if there's another material, maybe a green wood or something to use in lieu of the vinyl. And three would be perhaps sending this off for a peer review if you think that would get you some more clarification on the options here. I am extremely worried that a denial of this project is going to send us back to court because the project is approvable. So I would just ask you to all consider those four options and see if any one of them is acceptable, and perhaps we mull over those options and recontemplate this in 2 weeks.
I think that's a good idea. Because if we can't cite a specific law or ordinance or rule that this is breaking, then we are exposed.
So I guess I would ask Charlie and the Shadorowskis if they would continue this out another 2 weeks, let the commission think about what happened tonight, think about the regulations, think about the options, and we'll make further decisions at another meeting, or the vote that they took holds and we move forward with the denial. And the commission as well has to consider if they would like to move forward in this direction also.
I agree with your first option.
Yeah.
So do you need a motion to continue?
Yes.
So I move that we continue Shadorowski, map 28 parcels 113 and 114 for 2 weeks.
Do I hear a second?
Should we? Yeah, I second that. Ben.
My only question is that we took a vote. We had a motion and a second. We took a vote. How do we clarify that we are not that we've decided to reconsider.
So there's discussion, we had discussion, you can have discussion, and then you can reconsider the vote.
Okay, so we're reconsidering the vote and we're going to take 2 weeks to consider it.
With more information.
More information, yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Mr. Dr.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Again, I don't mean to interrupt your procedure at all, but you asked for a comment from us as well. And if Jenny can help me out, that would be wonderful as well. But if we can make sure that that report that Charlie has gets to every member of the committee, that would be wonderful. And like I said, if there's another material, if there's something else that you guys recommend, we'll do whatever it is that's appropriate. We have no problem with modifying the plans. It's at an early stage for us. We just want to do the right thing. We're not interested in doing anything bad for the environment,
Right.
like I said before.
All right, so the materials are one part of it, but there was also concerns about why can't we move this back? And that might require a third party examination to clarify for us what the ramifications of that.
I think we can look
Pardon me,
with
Charlie?
specific with specific attention to the neighbor who well, that's a whole other issue because their wall is contiguous with ours now. I'm talking about Voulier.
Is that to the south?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Leon, to answer your concern that you were alluding to, I think one thing we may be able to do, if I take a look at it, is connect the proposed rock revetment on the north end to the 83 Samoset Avenue property, and then maybe start to taper it slightly in at the other end of the property so that it is a little bit further from the water line. And that is the area where the beach actually has dropped more, so that it will kind of be even further away from the mean high water line. So that's something I can also reevaluate, as well as provide that additional documentation for the U.S. Army Corps report. And we can also take another look at the materials as well.
And are we able to do some research about this material on our own and not just the Army Corps report and share that with everyone? How would we do that in a public meeting, or can we share information with the commission before the next hearing?
Yeah, it's a material question. You can share information on the material at any time.
Okay.
I would love to get a copy of any of that just for my own
Sure.
future reference as well. That would be great.
I would send anything to Hillary and let her distribute it to all the parties involved.
Thank you.
John and Barbara and Ben, does it sound like if it were to taper and that they redesign the return at the southern end, would that ameliorate your issues? Because we can't just have a sharp stop with the revetment to the north.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. I think every time we've seen this, it's been an improvement.
Yep.
And that would be a further improvement from my standpoint, not understanding all the engineering aspects, but in terms of understanding use of the beach by the public and where this property is in terms of the high tide line, yes, it would be an improvement from my standpoint. I don't know about John's reservations, but.
Of course, I'm willing to look at any new information.
Of course.
If there was a way to get information on where the location of the mean high water line would be with the new wall, that would be good.
I can try to show that on the site plan, the layout, the overview, maybe even as a different color, or maybe even as a sketch plan, just based on removing that wall and reshaping the grade where that line would fall, which actually will be seaward of the proposed structure.
Okay, so we need a vote on the continuance, I believe. Barbara?
Yes, was it moved to continue?
It was
Yes.
moved.
Yeah, okay, yes, then, yes.
Ben,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I also say yes. So we're looking forward to getting some more information. We'll do some research ourselves, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you all very much for the time and the feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to be here.
Absolutely. Okay.
All right, Leon, I'm gonna go because I gotta move around and start bending here. But if you have
Take
any,
some pain relievers.
God, if you
I
have
hope you got
any
good
questions, let me
drugs.
know. Let me know. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Hillary.
All
That
right,
was
bye,
really
Hillary.
valuable. Okay, I'm sorry that it's taken so long. Kimmick, is there anybody representing Kimmick?
We're
I
good.
think we lost everybody. I'm not hearing anybody for Kimmick. All right. How about the Welfare Harbor?
Well,
combo?
we would have to vote to continue Kimmick then, I think.
Yeah, well, I think they've already dropped off if they were here at all. So why don't we continue then? Do I hear a motion to continue?
I move we continue Kimmick.
Second, John.
Okay, we'll take a vote. Barbara,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Leon, yes. Okay, that's continued. Okay. Easier ones are getting easier. Okay, the Wellfleet Harbor Condo Trust, Messina. Do we have a
Hi,
representative?
this is Paul Messina, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Thank you, sir.
I was on the Zoom earlier, but it dropped off, and so I'm just on the phone.
Okay. We looked at your, I take it this is only the lower parking lot, is that right? Where there's like.
That's correct.
Okay.
I submitted a site plan where I highlighted the areas that would be refreshed.
Unfortunately, the copies didn't really show the highlight, so we were kind of presuming, but we were in the right spot, so that's good.
Well, it's all the units. It's units 1 through 5, right? Or 1 through, what's number unit that's, oh, no.
Well, no, it's not that. It's the units are 11,
Oh, okay, sorry.
14, 15, 17, 18, and 19. And then there were a few parking spaces that are parallel with the access road kind of down the hill from the upper units.
Okay. All right, we didn't have a highlighted plan, so we just went to 17, 18, 19 today. But I think it's more or less the same in all of the units.
It is. These are existing parking areas. I've owned there. I'm one of the trustees of the condo trust, and we've owned since 2014. This was done before that in terms of the last time this work was done. And we're not changing the location at all. These are parking areas that are already bounded by granite cobbles. And the stones that are within those cobbles, over time, they just get pushed down into the sand or they just disappear. The main road is, as you saw, paved, and this would be accessing off that paved road into the parking spaces, removing material that's become mixed with sand over time. As the stones disappear, then more weeds encroach into that area, so they'd be removing that and then replacing the stone to refresh it and make it look new. But it's not getting larger. It's the same material that's there now that would be put back, and removing anything with weeds and vegetation or too much sand, so that it just extends the life of these existing parking areas. So it's really maintenance.
So you won't be doing anything to restrict the flow of water through the material and back to the.
Not at all. Not at all. Nope, not at all. It's just putting in stone, removing material that's there and putting in stone to replace it.
Question, Leon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Will you be, how will you be disposing of the material that's scraped off?
Well, we haven't hired anyone yet to do this work, but they would be removing that material off-site.
Okay, that was my question.
Okay.
Any
And
other?
a lot of this, I don't think is even within our jurisdiction. Some of them are. So I don't think there's a problem here at all. And I would vote to approve this RDA.
Leon, I had just one question.
Yes, Mike.
If the speaker could talk about the two boats that are parked on the edge of the coastal bank, the two large motorboats.
Yes, there's one next to Unit 14, and then there's one down by our dumpster area closer to Commercial Street. They've been put there off season for years, so they go in the same spots every year. They're removed, and the boats go in the water, during the season.
Mike, we didn't see those. Are they on the coastal bank? Where are they?
Yes, they're both on the lower cottages, about, I don't know, 10 feet maybe from the coastal bank on one case and a little bit further on the other.
On vegetation?
Well, it's disturbed. It's just low vegetation. It's just grasses and so on. And they are one is on a stand and one is on a trailer.
That's correct, yes.
They're certainly not doing the coastal bank any good.
No, it's not.
Those should be stored in the driveways of those houses, of those cottages.
I agree.
Certainly the 1 by 14 could be put on their stone parking area, what we're talking about refreshing here. The other one isn't really by a parking area. So I'm not sure what the solution would be there. That's the one that would go into the parking area by number 14 is the one on the trailer, and the one that's down by our dumpster area is the one that's on the stand, and that's not near a parking area.
Is that within our 100-foot buffer zone?
Just by looking at I think it would be. Is it possible to put it on further inland and on disturbed land already? Maybe on the other side of the road?
That is possible. We have to look at that. I don't have a plan here in front of me, but I'm just thinking out loud. Part of what we would be refreshing are existing parking spaces that are parallel with that lower road, and perhaps once one of those spaces is refreshed, perhaps the boat could go there on that parking space. This boat we're talking about is a bigger boat, so I'm just a little concerned about the dimensions of it and fitting onto one of these parking spaces that ends up being refreshed so that it doesn't block the road. But we can certainly look at that. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so I would suggest making that a condition that not this year because it's late, but in future that boats not be stored anywhere within the 100-foot buffer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
With that condition, I'd move approval of Wellfleet Harbor Condo Trust map 21 parcel 116 RDA to restore parking areas.
Is a -3.
-3, right. I second.
just gonna have to explain to me sometime what all that means, but.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, you have to explain it so I can understand it.
It just means that the work is in the buffer zone, but it's not going to alter an area subject to protection.
I have a helpful mnemonic, Leon. If it's a negative two is a lower number than 3. So if it's down in the actual resources at a lower elevation, so it's a -2. If it's higher, it's out in the buffer and it's a -3.
I see. Okay, that's good. All right, so did I hear a second?
Yes.
Barbara second.
Okay, let's have a vote. Barbara?
Yes.
Benjamin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Leon, yes. And Barbara, what form do we have to do for this?
RDA, let me take my earplugs off and
Form 2.
Form 2.
it's Form 2.
So we're up to 2 5s and a 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you all very much.
Make sure that those boats get moved next year, okay?
We will do that. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Boy, the most patient people in the world. I am now addressing the whites.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you. We went out to your property today and saw the trees. Would you like to speak to us about that?
Husband.
I'm just gonna, yeah, they're right by the wires and by the house. And as we all know, we know what locust trees can do in the wind as they get bigger. So I just would like permission to cut my trees down there and before they do any damage on my house or my power lines.
We would like to we'd like to see those trees replaced with trees. They don't have to be in the same place, but we want to nurture the carbon capture. And also that it was pointed out that along the bank behind the single tree that's standing out away from the house, there's not much in the way of brush along the edge as there is further around the coast there. Right, John?
Yeah, it would be to the south of the house. If you look to the west of the house, straight at the marsh, to the sunset, you have a very nice native shrub border. And I'm suggesting that for mitigation, for removal of the trees, you plant a shrub border on the south bank of the to the south of the house, which would be along the edge of the marsh of native species.
So we do have a formula, a tree for a tree, but if you're replacing a tree with shrubs, then there's a certain ratio of shrubs that has to be planted to make up for that tree. I don't know the ratio offhand, but it's in our
3 to 1, isn't it?
It's in our regulations.
Well,
Okay.
And also, I'm wondering, as Leon did on site, if this should be an NOI, because usually a 1 or 2 trees might be an RDA, but this is fairly significant project in terms of being 8 big mature trees. So I'm just asking the commission if this should really be an RDA. And I'll ask the whites, did someone suggest that you file this as an RDA rather than an NOI?
What's an RDA?
That's what you filed.
Request for determination of
Okay,
authority.
that was the form that was forwarded to us to file for this project. You know, since we were just concerned about taking down a few trees that were close to the wires on the house.
John?
Leon, I think that this qualifies for an RDA because they're locusts, they're not native. They're in a highly developed portion of the property. They're close to the power line, the lines, they're close to the house. I think we can do this as an RDA.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, I was just asking because usually if we exceed a certain number of trees, we
Yeah.
want. Okay,
Okay, so are we gonna go with, how should, John, why don't you make a, why don't you make a motion?
I move that we approve the request determination of applicability for White 1305 State Highway as a -3 with the condition that, well, we still have to decide whether we want shrubs and trees or both.
Either one.
I think a mixture would be fine. I think if you did the shrub border, but then put some trees in between the house and the Route 6 there, it may also help to deflect some of the noise if you
Yeah.
had certain types of trees.
Okay, but there's going to have to be a conversation with the agent, with either
Right.
Hillary or Doug to
Right.
come up with the formula, because none of us can remember what it is offhand.
Yeah.
So the
And then they can
planting,
also help with the species, the native species that are appropriate.
so the condition
so-
would be that you consult the agents about what you should plant.
And do that before you
Cut the trees.
cut the trees down.
Okay,
But-
so.
But
do we-
we're recommending.
So we're getting approval, but we have to
At the plant,
discuss with.
you have to have a planting plan.
Right, that's it.
It'll be conditioned on,
Okay,
okay? And we'll leave,
so do we have to go through this board meeting
No.
again?
No, no.
No.
no,
No, okay.
You,
This
you-
is very new to us.
you
We're-
talk directly to Hillary
yeah,
about that.
Okay,
or Doug. And Doug's very up on the native plants. So you can
okay.
work with them to decide how many trees you want to plant, and then the remainder would be a brush, along.
Shrub.
Shrub.
Okay.
It's getting late.
I need dinner. Okay, so
So
with
we're
that-
on.
well, we're not quite there. yet,
Yes.
but we're-
Almost.
Oh,
Did we vote?
We need a second.
Don, you moved. I need a second.
Second, Barbara.
Okay, we're gonna vote. Barbara, you get to vote.
Yes, yes, with the conditions that there's a planting plan approved by the agent.
Yes, and Ben,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike,
I recuse because the trust is a neighbor.
okay, I say yes. So you're good to go. You work with Hillary
yay,
and
wonderful.
fixed up.
All right. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Thank you.
All right.
That's
Good
another
Good night.
two for us, right?
I move that we adjourn.
Wait, I have a suggestion,
Yep.
and Leon as chair may be able to take this to Hillary. But is there any way for us to consider some of these RDAs first on the agenda?
I think so.
And maybe not have so many complex projects on one agenda and spread them out a little bit. I'm feeling really burned out by this
Yep.
group this winter, especially because of this Zoom thing. But I mean, we've been here over 4 hours. This is, I mean, I'm going to resign if this continues. I just have to say, I just don't have the stamina anymore.
Well, I agree. I think we need to flow control this, and we certainly should put things like removing trees up front.
Right.
Because we knew that those other
Yes.
ones.
Yeah.
Great.
Right?
If I can interject,
Yeah.
Well, I learned a lot. I learned a lot. That's one thing I can tell you.
But Christine has something to say.
well,
She
we
knows
typically
more
do
about
RDAs and certificate of compliances first. And I had a discussion with Doug on this because Hillary's in the office one day a week. Doug, he's in and out. And I caught, when I was doing the agenda, I asked him how I should do this. And it was a recommendation on his part because we paid all these experts to allow them to speak and hopefully try and get through that. It's the only reason that the agenda was set up this way,
Yeah.
because the town is paying.
Yeah, I'd still question the value of that, though. Yeah, but they all stood around. I mean, they were all here for 3 hours, so.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think anybody.
They were delayed by
anticipated
20
it.
minutes. Would that be a problem? I don't think so.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
yeah, or if
Yeah.
we started those at 5:30 and did the other ones first.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I
Something-
agree.
Something
I
like
totally
that.
agree.
And I
We need
appreciate.
a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, okay.
So move.
All right.
Second, Michael.
Yep, you're good. The whites are
All
good.
right. All right, good
All right,
night.
Barbara,
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Yes. Gonna say yes to adjourning?
Yes, we need a voice vote. Yes, Barbara.
Ben,
Yes.
John,
Yes, and I'd like to thank Leon for being a great chairman tonight.
Yes.
Man.
I've got a
Difficult,
certain hang of this.
yeah, difficult waters to navigate.
Mike,
Okay.
yes.
Mike, did you vote yes?
Yes.
Okay, and Leon votes yes. So we are adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right.